north of Scotland. Quite a cold start, perhaps some pockets of mist and fog and some frost in rural spots too. But otherwise it is going to be largely cloudy, still with those drips and drabs of rain and drizzle, once again just mainly over hilly areas, and a fairly cloudy and drab start across the rest of England and Wales. Now this leads us into a fairly dry day, but that cloud is going to be sticking around. Some brighter spells at times, once again the far north of Scotland, perhaps at times down across the southeast, but otherwise a fair amount of cloud around, and quite breezy at times around coastal areas. But on the whole, largely dry, once again some rain and drizzle across the hills, but otherwise a fairly settled day on offer, and turning a little bit warmer across the country too, particularly in the south and southeast. We're looking at highs of around 17 to 18 Celsius. Into the evening, it will turn more and more unsettled. We'll see some showers, some longer spells of rain creeping up from the south. This will be heavy at times, and that leads us into an unsettled day on Wednesday. Drier and cooler on Thursday, but likely turning wet and windy towards the end of the week.
Woo! A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on...
There's only luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and a very happy Monday. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and, of course, all across the UK. On today's show, Britain is open for the business, cries Sir Keir Starmer as the PM is pledging to get rid of regulations that are holding back investments in Britain. We'll also be crossing live to Chancellor Rachel Reeves in just over an hour. Plus, we've asked her, is Britain getting rid of slavery reparations? You will not want to miss the answer. Next up, data seen exclusively by GB News shows that an astonishing 250,000 immigrants have been let into the UK since 2017 without even having a basic criminal record check. I'll be joined by the report's author who claims we have no idea who walks among us. And John Caldwell, the billionaire Phones for You founder, reckons Sir Keir Starmer should be paid $300,000 per year, and that's almost double his current salary. I'll be joined by the mobile tycoon to find out why he thinks the PM needs a pay rise signal boost. And in 2017, Millwall fan Roy Larner risked his life and saved an estimated 30 lives when he heroically attacked an ISIS terrorist during the London Bridge terror attack. And now they're making a movie about the Lion of London Bridge's life. I'm beautifully astonished to be joined by the heroic Roy for his first major TV interview. And that's all coming up between now and 6. Welcome aboard. We've got a Monster Monday packed full of exclusives, including later in the show, Dame Andrea Jenkins has noticed an alarming rise in animal remains when she walks her dog. She reported it to the police, and guess what? Local police have told her this could be animal sacrifices on the rise in the Yorkshire area. Does that have a cultural background? We'll ask Dame Andrea about that later in the show. Plus, as I said at the top of the show there, we sat down with Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, today, and we've put it to her straight. Will the Labour Party be paying reparations for slavery? Could cost trillions of pounds. You'll want to make sure you're sitting down, trust me, when you find out that answer a little later in the show. Now, get in touch usual ways, gbnews.com/your say. But now here's your headlines, and it's Mark White.
Good afternoon. At 3:02, the main headlines from the GB News Centre. Stansted Airport is to undergo a massive transformation as part of a £1.1 billion investment, which will create 5,000 new jobs. The 5-year construction programme will expand the main terminal by a third and see the existing building refurbished. It will also deliver a 14-megawatt solar farm on site, which will help power the airport's infrastructure. The plans were unveiled by the Prime Minister at the flagship international investment summit in London. 4 US tech firms have also used the summit to announce plans to invest £6.3 billion in a data centre infrastructure in the UK. Sir Keir Starmer told the gathering he will do everything in his power to galvanise economic growth.
In times like this, economic growth is vital, as it's always been, if we're to steer our way through a great period of insecurity and change and on to calmer waters. Because when working people benefit from that growth, when every community enjoys the fruits of wealth creation.
The perfume bottle carrying the Russian nerve agent that killed a Salisbury woman contained enough poison to kill thousands of people. The official Novichok inquiry heard how 44-year-old Dawn Sturgis died in Salisbury District Hospital hours after coming into contact with the nerve agent. She'd collapsed at her boyfriend's home on the 30th of June 2018 after the pair found the discarded perfume bottle in a local park. The nerve agent had been used in a bid to murder former spy Sergei Skripal. His daughter Yulia and a local police officer also fell seriously ill. Russia denies any involvement and has described the inquiry as a circus. A jury at the Old Bailey has been told how the father of Sarah Sharif fled to Pakistan after allegedly killing the 10-year-old and called police to say, "I legally punished her and she died." Sarah's father, Irfan Sharif, her stepmother and uncle are on trial accused of killing her. Her body was discovered at her home in Woking in Surrey in August last year. The defendants have pleaded not guilty to her murder and causing or allowing the death of a child. The police firearms officer who fatally shot London man Chris Kaba has told a jury he thought one of his colleagues was about to die when he opened fire. Giving evidence in public for the first time at the Old Bailey, PC Martin Blake said he was filled with dread as the Audi Mr Kaba was driving moved backwards and forwards as police officers surrounded the vehicle. PC Blake fatally shot the 24-year-old through the windscreen of the car in Streatham in south-east London in September 2022. The officer is accused of murder, which he denies. The FBI is investigating whether a man caught with loaded weapons near a Donald Trump rally at the weekend was part of another attempted assassination. Local police arrested the man carrying multiple weapons and fake passports as he attempted to get into the Trump rally in California. The 49-year-old Las Vegas resident denied wanting to hurt the former president and was released on bail. The local county sheriff said the suspect was likely to be a sovereign citizen, someone who doesn't believe in government control. 4 IDF soldiers have been killed and more than 60 wounded in a drone strike on an army base in northern Israel. It's the deadliest attack on a military base since Israel stepped up attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon last month. The Lebanese terror group have claimed responsibility for the attack. It comes as the UN peacekeeping mission in Lebanon says Israeli tanks forcibly entered its base in the south of the country. The Lebanese Health Ministry said 51 people were killed by Israeli strikes across the country yesterday. And finally, the snowman is being depicted on a new Royal Mint 50p coin with a one-off gold version hidden in one of its advent calendars. As part of the launch of the collectible coin, a solid gold 50p piece has been hidden behind door 24 in just one limited edition. The coins commemorate the much-loved character immortalised in the books and films of Raymond Briggs. Very nice too, but why do you need a little wee gold coin when you've got 3 hours of solid gold broadcasting from the sovereign himself, Martin Daubney?
Mark, you've surpassed yourself. Beautiful link. Thank you very, very much, my friend. Now, let's get cracking with the show, because the Prime Minister has set out his plans to rip up red tape in a bid to woo global investors at his first ever International Investment Summit today. Keir Starmer pledged to get rid of regulation that needlessly holds back investment as part of his plan for economic growth. And joining me now is GB News' political editor Chris Hope, live from that investment summit. Chris, welcome to the show. All the talk before the show was of who wouldn't be there. The world's richest man, Elon Musk, who fell out with the Prime Minister on his social media platform X. Louise Haigh, the Transport Minister, seeming to put a foot in it with P&O, who threatened to pull out. But now it's underway. What's happening?
That's right. Well, welcome to this investment summit here, Martin, at the Guildhall. The Prime Minister is still here. He's been speaking earlier. And almost if you shut your eyes, I was struck by how almost like Liz Truss, the former Tory Prime Minister, he sounded. He says that we will make sure that every regulator in this country, especially our economic and competition regulators, takes growth as seriously as this room does. And so in a sense, they are trying to say, we're going to rip up regulation. If it gets in the way of our growth message, it won't last long. Now, Labour, when they're in opposition, of course, said that it was just that approach in terms of getting rid of regulation, which helped to lead towards the Grenfell Tower fire, because that meant that building standards were not as followed as they should have been, as a recent inquiry found. So he's really trying to make a pitch here for companies, for corporates, for their money, for their growth, for their money to help grow this economy. But the question is, will that be at the expense of protecting ordinary people? That's a question which I've been raising with various ministers. They say that is not the case. They point to the thousands of documents required just to get an offshore wind farm connected to the grid and the like. So they do see a problem here, and they're trying to get this economy growing. Overall, around £60 billion worth of deals unveiled here. Some of them already flagged earlier. One for Stansted Airport to be expanded was already there. It was £1 billion announced in November last year. But certainly, this is the government trying to put growth at the heart of what it's up to, Martin.
Isn't the elephant in the room, though, Chris, October the 30th? I mean, nobody knows what's going to be happening with the economic landscape. Businesses don't know, investors don't know, and we're already hearing lots of stories about entrepreneurs, millionaires fleeing the country ahead of an expected tax grab. National insurance not being ruled out, those risers to employers. So why are employers going to come to Britain if the prevailing wind seems to be this going to get hammered by this government?
Yeah, that's right, Martin. There's no question October 30th budget is the second part. In terms of the first part of this play for investment is today here at the Guildhall with like Eric Schmidt, Google's Eric Schmidt here. And incidentally, by the way, asking the Prime Minister directly, shouldn't you have an anti-regulation minister to try and get growth going? The second part of that is going to be October 30th, when we finally see a degree or understand the scale of what the government's planning to increase taxes, as we know, cut benefits and try and get the economy going. That's where the focus is. I was talking to a senior minister here moments ago, and it strikes me, and they agree, that maybe what we've seen so far are the trailers, and the movie starts on October 31st, the day after that budget. It's been delayed by 16 weeks to give a chance to the OBR, the independent experts, to check that it won't scare the markets. But once that budget is out the way, I think the real work for this government starts. It's been quite a wait, though. I think they've lost, by any account, they've lost their momentum since the end of July. So they want to regain that, and that will start on October 30th. And that's the big concern, though, for companies, is what will that mean? We've heard from Rachel Reeves today, it won't go above 25% corporation tax, but what else they're looking to do? The speculation about employers being forced to pay more national insurance, either on their pension contributions or into the National Insurance Fund. We'll wait and see.
I wonder if that's part of the problem. The ambition seems to be relatively low. P&O Ferries, if you remember, Chris, relocated historically away from the UK to Cyprus because Cyprus's corporation tax is 13%. That's precisely the kind of nimble corporation tax we were promised after Brexit. Yeah. The ability to be free of the EU and go lower on tax. Invite the world in. Come on, we're the lowest in Europe. Come to Britain. Oh, it won't be any higher than 25%. It's hardly flashing the ankle, is it?
Well, it's not. It was down at 19%, wasn't it, shortly after the Brexit referendum. We look at Ireland, where it's much lower, and Ireland is part of the European Union. So part of the offer had been try and make the UK Singapore on Thames, trying to get the idea of cutting tax here to try and encourage more growth. That hasn't happened. As you say, just saying it's no more than 25%, it puts us right into the middle mark, I think, of most developed economies. So the question is, why can't the government go further? I can say now that Sir Keir Starmer has just left this event at the Guildhall, so we'll be hearing, he's made his speech, but we're hearing shortly from Rachel Reeves. And we've got a big interview, which I've done with Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, playing out on air at 5 p.m, when some of these issues, Martin, will be raised.
Now, Chris, I know you're not allowed to tell us specifically what is in that interview, but can you give us a flavour of how you likely grilled the Chancellor?
Well, areas I talked about were national insurance contributions. It looks to me like we are looking at an increase in employers' national insurance contributions because so far they're only saying that commitment in the manifesto not to increase income tax, VAT or national insurance only applied to workers, not to employers. There'll be more on that in that interview. I also asked her, just for you, Martin, about the government's intention to pay or not to pay reparations, historic reparations to communities affected by slavery from our past. She gave quite a firm answer on that, which we'll hear at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, to pay or not to pay reparations, that is the question, Chris Hope. I know you put that to the Chancellor earlier on my behalf. I'm very, very excited by the answer, but of course, duty-bound to secrecy until later in the show. Chris Hope, always an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and we'll speak to you a little bit later. Thank you. Now, time is ticking on your chance to win £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway, and it's the most cash we've ever given away here at GB News. Now, there's only just 2 weeks remaining to get your entry in. Make sure you don't miss out. And here's all the details that you need to try and trouser it.
There's only 2 weeks remaining on demand. Good luck.
Good luck now. We've got a show packed full of sizzling exclusives today, and the first one is coming right up. An astonishing report. You will not believe what it contains, because it reveals that there has been a boom in immigrants coming in without any basic criminal record checks. The Centre for Migration Control have been crunching the numbers, and they claim we have no idea who walks among us. It's an astonishing report, and that's next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We are now delighted to be joined by comedian and my beautiful friend, Francine Lewis, who's here to share with us her upcoming book, The Last Laugh, and an exciting competition in collaboration with none other than that mean Simon Cowell. Francine,
he's not so mean anymore.
Oh, is he not?
He's not. And do you know what?
Since having a child, is it maybe?
Definitely. It's really weird because I really liked Simon. He was nasty. I just found that, I don't know, quite sexy. Now he's way too nice. Way too nice.
That's what they say, isn't it? You get all the nice guys say, I never get any luck with women, and they always say I'm too nice.
Do you know what? The truth is, I've always thought Simon was lovely. He's such a nice guy. Like, when I was doing Britain's Got Talent, I was very, very excited, you know, to meet Simon again because it was the second time I'd actually met him. And I always thought he was such a charming, lovely man.
Of course, you are more recently well known for BGT and your impressions and whatnot.
Do you know what? I do watch a lot of reality TV, a lot of that sort of stuff.
What do you watch?
I love Towie, whenever Love Island's on. Seriously, honey, it's 100% definitely. You got to watch Essie. It's all about Towie. Love it, seriously. So I'm always doing, you know, whatever the new reality shows are.
The favourite is Katie Price, and we've got a video. I think we've got a selfie video of us doing.
Have we?
Yeah, we have. From
I'm showing Tatiana to Katie Price, which she does amazingly. Come on, Tatiana, let's...
No, I don't.
Tatiana!
Katie, there's a mixture between Katie Price and Tatiana.
What do you think? I love when people take me off. It shows what a big star I am.
It's the lick of the lips.
The People's Channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top two for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, on Thursday as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision Time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. this Thursday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's bang on 3:20 on Monday, and I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, brace yourselves, because data seen exclusively by GB News shows that an astonishing 250,000 immigrants have been let into the UK since 2017 without even a basic criminal record checks. An astonishing story. Here to crunch the numbers and go into the detail, I'm now joined by the Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control, Robert Bates. Rob, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. You sent me these figures yesterday. We always work on GB News, as so do you. I was astonished to learn that everybody who comes to the UK surely should be going through a basic criminal record check. I work at my kids' school on the PTA. I had to have a full background check just to be able to volunteer to work in a school. How on earth can it be that 250,000 immigrants can just waltz in with no basic checks?
Yeah, so I think the assumption of a lot of the British public would be that the Home Office would be at least doing its due diligence when it's letting in so many people every single year. And as we know, we've got a huge migrant crime crisis in the country at the moment. We've got 10,500 people currently in our prisons that are foreign nationals. We saw figures the other week that suggested there have been 369,000 foreign nationals arrested between 2021 and 2023. And the question we need to be asking ourselves is, why has this been going on? Why are migrants 2 times more likely to be arrested than an average Brit? And the simple fact of the matter seems to be that the Home Office is not doing any of the very basic checks that you would expect it to be doing on those coming into the country.
And that's an incredible admission. And when this was set up, back in 2017, I believe, the Theresa May regime, they said that people where there might be Brits at vulnerability, such as schools, care workers, NHS workers, they would be checked. But talk us through some of the professions where there are simply no checks.
Well, we've got a lot that, as you say, we would be expecting if it was a British person to be undergoing pretty extensive, if not basic, enhanced and more so to fulfil the roles. So we have those in the financial sector, we have those in the legal sector, but we also have those that are perhaps more concerning for the average person. We have the kind of tradies, we have your sparkies, we have your bricklayers and your welders who, you know, really end up in quite intimate positions with a lot of the time vulnerable old people or, you know, trying to do tasks around the place without any real supervision. And I think that would be a concern that a lot of people would have, that these people have come in here. You'd assume if someone's turning up at your house to do these jobs that they would have been comprehensively signed off by the British government, ordained as being, you know, safe and good to go. But the fact of the matter is we simply don't know that.
And also it's worth pointing out that if you come into Britain on one of the vocations where you are checked, there's nothing stopping you, of course, giving up a job and going to a different sector later on down the line. So you could come in without being checked and then apply to be a teacher and not have to pass that basic check. I was also astonished to figure out, and again, some of those more intimate vocations you're talking about, clergymen from overseas can just come in. We all know there's been troubles with some churches overseas. Also, physios, intimate working in a sports environment, and even some higher education teachers, lecturers working with students. They're not having the basic criminal background check. Again, Rob, I put it to you, this is astonishing that people can waltz in and we have simply no idea who's walking amongst us.
It's thrown more fuel on the fire, quite frankly. And if you look at some of the nationalities that are overly represented in these routes that aren't being checked, you recognise that there's a real parallel between those nationalities and certain crimes that they're more likely to commit. And you have to ask the question as to why is the Home Office, which we've only just finally started to see migrant arrest data by nationality, and we've started to see migrant crime league tables. We've only just started to see that, thanks to, in no small part, the work of GB News. And, you know, you have to kind of think, why is no one looking more holistically at our immigration system? You know, if we're going to have to go down the route, which I think the majority of the country wouldn't, we went down, of mass migration, then at the very least the Home Office could be doing is to make sure that those that are coming in are safe to do so.
And the figures you got here, it's 237,426 foreign nationals on a work visa. But you also point out, with some justification, Rob, that this takes into no account the dependents or also students. They simply come in with no checks at all. So what could the final true figure be?
Well, the final true figure, if you include dependents, will probably be around about 500,000 people that have come in since 2021 that haven't had a basic check done by the Home Office. I think if you include students, which now obviously we know an overwhelming number of students now stay in the country long after their studies are finished and go into the job market, I think the figure would probably be even higher, probably be close to 1 million. And it just lays bare, for once and for all, the true incompetence with which our political class have handled this mass migration experiment since its inception. And no one has gone anywhere near close to rectifying some of the problems that we are seeing as a result of it.
And Rob, you also pointed out to me earlier on that certain countries have no checks whatsoever, irrespective of visas that are applied for from them, because the host country simply doesn't collate criminal records on its own citizens.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting little caveat that I don't know if anyone's picked up on before. A lot of people that are going into the education sector are going into the health sector and the care sector and really dealing with very vulnerable people. About 10,000 are coming from countries where the Home Office is almost putting its hands up and saying, you know what, we don't have a means through which we can actually acquire a criminal record certificate, and therefore they're just having to go on the word of the person applying, the word of the employer, hoping to employ that individual, that this person is kosher. And I think that just, again, lays bare the sheer scale of the problem that we are facing. It's just incompetence at every level.
And a couple of the countries you've highlighted here that are included in that are Senegal and Sierra Leone. Now, these are countries that have a lot of their own domestic issues, you know, war, terrorism. There's a much higher, a lot of poverty, a lot of social dysfunction. It stands to reason that if you're coming from a country like that, you're more, you know, proportionately likely to come from a criminal background. And yet there is no mechanism whatsoever to even check them, because the country in question doesn't keep the records.
No, and it's the same logic that applies to those that are coming here illegally as well. Let's not forget that every single illegal migrant that comes into the country as well, we also have no real means through which we can carry out a DBS check. And if we were to try and go to a country where someone had entered our country illegally and say, hey, can you give us a update on X, Y or Z, they just simply wouldn't engage with the process. I think that we really need to realise that mass migration isn't wanted. The British public have never voted for it, but if the political class, and especially Labour, are going to proceed with it, then the very least they can do is to actually try and keep us safe whilst doing so. And that's why the Centre for Migration Control is today going to be writing to the leadership contenders in the Tory race, as well the Reform Party, and asking them to set out exactly how they think this problem could be rectified. Because it's very simple. It's just a simple extension of the rules that were introduced in 2017. Across the board, every single visa route needs a background check.
I mean, I think most people watching this show right now, Rob, would just be saying what I said at the start of this interview. They will not be able to Adam and Eve it that you don't have to have that already when you come in the country. The fact you have to say, oh, by the way, unknown person from a country that doesn't check criminal records, would it be OK if you could provide evidence of your criminal record? The fact that isn't happening at all, Rob, is simply astonishing.
So I've been rooting around in Britain's immigration system and the absolute mess that it is for the last year or so, and this was the first time that my jaw truly hit the floor. The fact that we are simply not doing anywhere near the essential checks that need to be done. I think people have already started to sense that something's not gone quite right in terms of the crime rates of migrant populations, and started to feel that mass migration is making our country less safe. And now we finally have an answer why, because simply the Home Office is just waving everyone in.
And the last time we had you in, Rob, when myself and my son spent all weekend, again, I said we don't stop work at the weekend, crunching those numbers about the nationalities in British jails. Again, data the government doesn't want us to have. It showed 14.5 times more likely to be in a British nick if you're an Albanian than if you're a Brit. 9.5 times more likely if you're Vietnamese. It goes on and on and on. Brits were 38th most likely to be in prison in Britain. 37 nations more likely to be in Britain, in British nicks, than Brits. And yet, Rob, we can't get this data. Why don't they want us to have this data? Surely it would help us to police, to form a responsible immigration screening process.
It would enrich the conversation. What it would allow us to do is to recognise that those countries where individuals are having a above average likelihood, above the British average likelihood of falling foul of the law, we need to be putting extra checks on people coming from those countries. And I think what these statistics that we found today basically show is that we need to have almost a move towards a retrospective criminal background check on some people that have come in quite recently as well, just because people's minds won't be at ease knowing that there are so many people, you know, up to 500,000, maybe even if you include students, 1 million people in this country that we don't know if they've got any criminal background. We don't know whether they've been involved in financial impropriety. We don't know whether they've got a history of violence or murder or anything like that. And that's the kind of answers that the British public do deserve from our political class.
Now, Rob, if this has been going on back to 2017, and certainly the data you brought to us here today at GB News is only from the beginning of 2021, if it's 500,000 under the Conservatives, do you have any faith anytime soon that this is going to be rectified or addressed or clamped down on by the Labour regime?
Could you imagine the Labour Party actually doing something stringent on our borders? I think it's incredibly remote to suggest that they would do anything. I think Keir Starmer, as we see, is currently being made a fool of on the European stage. He's taking orders from the Europeans. We know for a fact that the Europeans, during the Brexit negotiations, were incredibly averse to the idea of those individuals that would be entering the UK after the end of the withdrawal agreement having to undergo these checks. So I think the prospect is incredibly remote.
But David Lammy is there today. David Lammy's in Brussels today, fighting for Britain, promising to strengthen visas, promising to strengthen borders, promising to make it much, much tougher to get into Britain. Rob Bates, you cynical individual, you have no faith in Mr Lammy's ability.
Well, it's not just David Lammy. I don't want to single out David Lammy. I think we followed the rich vein of British politics over the last 30 years. We see again and again and again a repeated series of promises that politicians are going to endeavour to bring down net migration numbers and are actually going to deliver on the wishes of the British public, which is to see a managed and controlled border. We're nowhere near that, and the idea that David Lammy, Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper, any of these types that are in their very heart of hearts far-left liberals are going to do anything to tackle this is remote.
And Rob is quickly going through some of the numbers. 28,000 nearly programmers and software workers, 20,000 IT workers, 15,000 management consultants, 12,000 chefs. The list goes on and on and on. 250,000. None of these people have had a basic background check to get into Britain. Thank you very much for sharing that exclusive report with us, Robert Bates, and that's, of course, the Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Rob, always a pleasure. Thank you. Now, still to come, I'll be speaking to the legendary pollster Sir John Curtis and why he thinks that neither Tory leadership candidates can save the Tories. But first, here's your news headlines with Mark White.
Good afternoon, it's 3:31. The main headlines from the GB News Centre. Stansted Airport is to undergo a massive transformation as part of a £1.1 billion investment. The 5-year construction programme will expand the main terminal by a third and see the existing building refurbished. The development will create 5,000 new jobs and also deliver a 14-megawatt solar farm on site, which will help power the airport's infrastructure. The plans were unveiled by the Prime Minister at the flagship International Investment Summit in London. 4 US tech firms also used the summit to announce plans to invest £6.3 billion in data centre infrastructure in the UK. The perfume bottle carrying the Russian nerve agent that killed a Salisbury woman contained enough poison to kill thousands of people. The official Novichok inquiry heard how 44-year-old Dawn Sturgis died at Salisbury District Hospital hours after coming into contact with the nerve agent. She'd collapsed at her boyfriend's home on the 30th of June 2018 after the pair found the discarded perfume bottle in a local park. The nerve agent had been used in a bid to murder former spy Sergei Skripal. His daughter Yulia and local police officer also fell seriously ill. A jury at the Old Bailey has been told how the father of Sarah Sharif fled to Pakistan after allegedly killing the 10-year-old and then called the police to say, "I legally punished her and she died." Sarah's father, Irfan Sharif, her stepmother and uncle are on trial accused of killing her. Her body was discovered at her home in Woking in Surrey in August last year. The defendants have pleaded not guilty to her murder. The police firearms officer who shot London man Chris Kaba has told a jury he thought one of his colleagues was about to die when he opened fire. Giving evidence in public for the first time at the Old Bailey, PC Martin Blake said he was filled with dread as the Audi Mr Kaba was driving moved backwards and forwards as the police officers surrounded the car. PC Blake fatally shot the 24-year-old through the windscreen of the car in Streatham in south-east London in September 2022. The officer denies murder. The FBI is investigating whether a man caught with loaded weapons near a Donald Trump rally at the weekend was part of another attempted assassination. Local police arrested the man carrying multiple weapons and fake passports as he attempted to get into the Trump rally in California. The 49-year-old Las Vegas resident denied wanting to hurt the former president and was released on bail. The local county sheriff said the suspect was likely to be a sovereign citizen, someone who doesn't believe in government control. OK, right up to date with the latest GB News headlines. We'll have more for you in half an hour.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, heading into tonight and tomorrow, it's often going to be cloudy with some rain and drizzle. There will be some clearer and brighter spells in the north, though, and feeling rather mild in the south. Some showers and longer spells of rain across the far northwest of Scotland and in the southeast of the UK. But this clearing away now as that frontal system drifts towards Europe. It is leaving behind, though, plenty of clouds, still with some drips and drabs of rain and drizzle, mainly across hilly areas. And this cloud will move its way northwards across the country, bringing a fairly cloudy night to come. There are plenty of clear spells in the far north of Scotland, and that's where it's going to be feeling cold under those clearer skies, but elsewhere still a fairly cool night on offer, but mild in the far south. So to start Tuesday then, there will be plenty of clearer spells in north of Scotland. Quite a cold start, perhaps some pockets of mist and fog and some frost in rural spots too. But otherwise it is going to be largely cloudy, still with those drips and drabs of rain and drizzle, once again just mainly over hilly areas, and a fairly cloudy and drab start across the rest of England and Wales. Now this leads us into a fairly dry day, but that cloud is going to be sticking around. Some brighter spells at times, once again the far north of Scotland, perhaps at times down across the southeast, but otherwise a fair amount of cloud around and quite breezy at times around coastal areas. But on the whole, largely dry, once again some rain and drizzle across the hills, but otherwise a fairly settled day on offer and turning a little bit warmer across the country too, particularly in the south and southeast. We're looking at highs of around 17 to 18 Celsius. Into the evening, it will turn more and more unsettled. We'll see some showers, some longer spells of rain creeping up from the south. This will be heavy at times, and that leads us into an unsettled day on Wednesday. Drier and cooler on Thursday, but likely turning wet and windy towards the end of the week.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Still issues in Lancashire near to Blackburn for the westbound side of the M65. Now closed from junctions 4 to 3 at the scene there of a collision. A collision too being dealt with on the northbound M1 Luton North just after that turn off there 11A. In the roadworks, a 3-vehicle accident means lane 1's combed off and we're seeing queues. 2 lanes shut clockwise M25 at the turn off for the M11 junction 27. A collision there causing congestion heading back towards Waltham Abbey there at junction 26. Now the southbound M23, the exit slip coming off at Crawley at 10 is currently blocked and queuing. There's an overturned vehicle. And Somerset finally, the northbound M5 Taunton 25 to Bridgewater South 24. A lane shut and queues. That's due to a collision.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:38 on this Monday afternoon. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now we're down to our final 2 candidates for the Tory leadership race, Kemi Badenoch and, of course, Robert Jenrick. But can either of them reverse their party's fortunes after that historic defeat back in July? Well, it would mean winning over the party and uniting the right after millions abandoned the Conservatives' 4.1 million, in fact, for Reform UK. Well, I'm joined now by the top pollster and the Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde, Sir John Curtis. Sir John, always a pleasure. You wrote a stinging article, I believe, today. Excellent stuff on the fact that neither Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick can do the job. Tell us why.
Well, perhaps they can't do the job. The piece is slightly more circumspect than perhaps it's headlined in the Independent. There are essentially 3 points to bear in mind. Perhaps the most important of them is that neither Robert Jenrick nor Kemi Badenoch are terribly widely known amongst the wider public. Between 2/3 and 3/4 are unable to give a view as to whether or not they think they were being acceptable or unacceptable, or whether they think favourably or unfavourably towards them. And even those who voted Conservative in 2024, half of them, again, don't express a view. So the truth is these are largely unknown characters. Their ability to reach out to the wider public is certainly untested and untried. That doesn't mean to say they necessarily lack the qualities, but hitherto at least they've not demonstrated those qualities within a wider public forum. So that means that either of them in some senses is a little bit of a gamble. The second point to bear in mind is that the sources of such popularity as they have vary somewhat between Conservative and Reform voters. Kemi Badenoch looks as though she is rather more popular amongst Reform voters than is Robert Jenrick, whereas the opposite is true amongst 2019 Conservative voters. That at least raises a question mark about the ability of either of them to unite the right, to bring Conservative and Reform voters together, which many, at least inside the Conservative Party, believe will be a necessary first step towards its electoral recovery. But then beyond that, there is frankly a much bigger question. I think both Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch are essentially in the camp of those Conservatives who take the view that ultimately the reason why the party did so badly is because it wasn't true to itself, that it presided over a substantial expansion of the state, the biggest since 1945, failed to curb immigration and was too willing to adopt the diversity and equality agenda. The trouble is, it's not entirely clear that that's where the public are at. Certainly, so far as the expansion of the state is concerned, it looks as though, at least for so long as the National Health Service is in the poor state that it is, that the public's priority is going to be about turning around public services rather than reducing taxation. And certainly, much more broadly, why did the Conservatives do badly? Well, basically, Partygate, Liz Truss and the economy, and indeed, yes, the state of the NHS. Now, in fairness, Robert Jenrick is certainly talking about the NHS, but I'm not sure as yet, at least, that the Conservatives realise that perhaps the divorce between them and the public is perhaps a bit more profound than saying we need to go back to traditional Conservative values.
And so, John, does this get back to something we hear a lot about, and that is the Conservative Party became such a broad church. In the end, it had no uniting faith, religion. And as a consequence, what we have now, we have two candidates from the right of the party. Maybe that was an accident. Maybe it was bad tactical voting. Maybe it backfired the way votes spread around. But everybody expected there to be a James Cleverly and a right-winger. We've actually got two right-wingers. Is that, do you think, Sir John, an additional barrier? There are a lot of Conservatives out there who voted Remain, who are relatively relaxed on human rights issues, relaxed on borders. Is that broad church even harder to unite when you have two people quite close together in their personal belief systems?
Well, I think how I respond to that, Martin, is I think the honest truth is that nobody who stood, not just the final two, but, James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat, etc., none of them succeeded in commanding a clear majority of the parliamentary party, which just ended up in the end being divided almost exactly a third. So certainly whoever wins, whether it's Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick, will have quite a substantial task in front of them, but trying to unite the parliamentary party, given that, in particular, the so-called One Nation group, people who are perhaps rather more towards the centre, are refusing to endorse either of them. That will certainly be a challenge. Was the Conservative church too broad? Well, you can certainly argue that one of the characteristics of the last parliament were three prime ministers who were, frankly, all three of them in rather different places. Boris Johnson, yes, delivered Brexit, but on the role of the state was somebody who was quite happy to use the state and to spend more. Liz Truss, in contrast, well, actually, she voted Remain, but was very much an economic liberal. And then Rishi Sunak, somewhere in between the two of them. It's certainly, but that's one of the complaints about the last Parliament and the last Conservative government was the lack of consistency in delivery of policy. It's one of the reasons why, for example, today you're seeing big business being courted by Labour, because many of those in the business and financial community before the election had come to the conclusion that the instability under the Conservatives, from their point of view, was one of the reasons why perhaps Labour looked as though it would be the safer bet. It was certainly the first time in my lifetime that the City in particular were willing to accept the prospect of a Labour victory. So the truth is, this shows how the Conservative Party lost the support of what we might regard as part of its broad natural constituency, those who run business, those in the financial world. They have become disenchanted with the Conservatives. So therefore, one of the tasks will be trying to get them back as well.
Well, it's going to be a long, long road ahead to the next general election. Thank you very much. Expert analysis, as ever, and that is Sir John Curtis. Thanks for your company. Always an absolute delight. Thank you. And also on that topic, don't forget that at 7 p.m. this Thursday, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch go head-to-head live exclusively here on GB News. And still to come, we're being urged to prepare for floods after the wettest 18 months on record. I'll be crossing live to a very wet Hull. We're assuming they just haven't dredged the rivers again. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
You could, if you're getting a bit bored later on and you've got some free time, tune in to Friends. Do you remember that?
It's on somewhere in the world all the time.
Probably one of those
incredible.
Obscure TV channels.
It's a big anniversary today, because apparently today was 30 years ago, was when it first hit the screens.
In 1994. just before or just after I was born, 89 me. The show ran for 10 series, becoming one of the most popular sitcoms of all time, and it scored numerous accolades, including 62 Primetime Emmy nominations. Joining us now in the studio to talk everything Friends and the big anniversary is showbiz reporter Steph Tetchy and my friend as well.
Happy Friendsniversary, guys. Yes, today is quite a monumental day for one of the most incredible sitcoms to ever hit our TV screens.
That it's on somewhere in the world.
There's millions of people around the world who are watching reruns, watching either streaming of Friends, and it doesn't get boring for people. I think, you know, 30 years later, just that it's such a simple concept. 6 New Yorkers just following their lives and their friendships. It proved a hit with loads of viewers worldwide.
The casting was super.
It was so incredible, and the thing is, these were all fresh faces at the time. It wasn't like they picked like people who were at the top of the game then. And I think it was such a hit with viewers is because they became our friends as well over the years. But obviously today is played with a bit of poignancy because, you know, there is one friend that is missing. And the creators of the show, Martha Kaufman and David Crane, saying that today is a bit fraught for both the cast because of Matthew Perry's passing. And he was known as one of the funniest friends, as most people would describe him as. And so today is kind of marred with sadness.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, on Thursday as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christie, from the live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. this Thursday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's approaching 10 to 4. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. As the UK faces increased wet weather once again, the Met Office and the Environment Agency are urging the public to prepare for potential flooding during Flood Action Week, marking the anniversary of Storm Babbitt. Let's find out more now from GB News' Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley. Anna, welcome to the show. So it rains every year, it seems to flood every year, and yet they don't seem to do anything about it. Tell us more.
Good afternoon, Martin. Well, this is what Flood Action Week is all about, the Environment Agency speaking to the public and raising awareness of how to prepare for a flood and also to try and prevent it happening. We're here in Hull at the moment. You can just see the River Hull behind me, and we're near to the tidal barrier where it meets the Humber estuary. And this whole complex here that I'm in is a 4-mile stretch of flood defence that cost £42 million to put in place. Hull is one of the UK's most low-lying cities, which makes it prone to flooding. And in 2013 was the last heavy floods that we saw here, 246 homes and businesses evacuated. And in 2013, floods were also bad here as well. So it's a city that's been hit hard, but has these flood defences in place to try and prevent that. And this Flood Action Week comes within it being a year since Storm Babette hit. That killed 7 people as a result of the flooding, and it wreaked devastation to people's lives, people's homes. For the channel for GB News last year, I was in Catcliffe in Rotherham, South Yorkshire, speaking to residents there that had their homes destroyed, their possessions destroyed. So this time round, the Environment Agency are warning people about what they can do. They say up to 5.5 million homes in England alone are at risk of flooding, and they've put out some information on their website and social media about what people can do. So one of those things is to go on the website and check the long-term flood risk for your area. It's a free service to find out the possible causes of flooding and how to manage a flood risk. Also to sign up to flood alerts via phone, via email, via text as well, so people can prepare themselves if there is a flood happening in the area that they live in. And then also to take steps to protect yourself from flooding. So that's including storing important documents in a secure and waterproof location, also taking rugs and furniture upstairs, checking how to turn off your electricity and water, and preparing a flood kit as well in case you need to evacuate.
Indeed. Now, quickly moving on. Earlier we spoke to the pollster Sir John Curtis, who said that no one can save the Tory party. Well, joining me now in the studio is the Tory MP for South Holland and the Deeping Sir John Hayes, who's backing Robert Jenrick. Tell us, Sir John, why you think Robert Jenrick can save the Tories.
I think it's about messaging, and I think it's about content. It's about and the skills to actually devise and then deploy that content. So what Robert does is he addresses those issues which the British public feel need to be addressed, namely immigration, namely our borders, namely the sovereignty of our parliament, and so on. And he does it in a way that's compelling. He's experienced, he's skilled, he's articulate. He looks like a prime minister, doesn't he?
Well, he had 14 years in power to get a lot of these things done, Sir John, and didn't.
Yeah, I think people at the last election felt what you just said. They felt that we'd had a mandate, particularly after 2019. We had a big majority, and not made the best of that mandate. And I think a recognition of what went wrong is vital before you can put it right. And Robert does recognise that. And as I say, I think he's got the experience and skills to put it right.
He sounds a lot like Nigel Farage. Is he pretending?
He said he looks better than Nigel Farage, but that's no disrespect to Nigel, who I know is one of your presenters and gets on well with me too. No, I don't think that's true. I think Robert is a root and branch Tory, actually. So people who knew him at university tell me he's been long in his views on what's right about Britain and what needs to be corrected. So I don't think there's any conversion. But what certainly happened is when he was at the Home Office, I think he then realised just how difficult things were. Now, if we were going to clamp down on both legal migration, mass migration, and illegal immigration, something had to change.
So, John, we have to leave it there. Thanks for your company. Always an absolute pleasure. Now, stick around because soon next I will talk to the billionaire founder of Phones For You, John Caldwell, who thinks Starmer deserves a pay rise. I'm Daubney on Britain's News Channel.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, heading into tonight and tomorrow, it's often going to be cloudy with some rain and drizzle. There will be some clearer and brighter spells in the north, though, and feeling rather mild in the south. Some showers and longer spells of rain across the far northwest of Scotland and in the southeast of the UK. But this clearing away now as that frontal system drifts towards Europe. It is leaving behind, though, plenty of clouds, still with some drips and drabs of rain and drizzle, mainly across hilly areas. And this cloud will move its way northwards across the country, bringing a fairly cloudy night to come. There are plenty of clear spells in the far north of Scotland, and that's where it's going to be feeling cold under those clearer skies. But elsewhere, still a fairly cool night on offer, but mild in the far south. So to start Tuesday then, there will be plenty of clearer spells in north of Scotland. Quite a cold start, perhaps some pockets of mist and fog and some frost in rural spots too. But otherwise it is going to be largely cloudy, still with those drips and drabs of rain and drizzle, once again just mainly over hilly areas, and a fairly cloudy and drab start across the rest of England and Wales. Now this leads us into a fairly dry day, but that cloud is going to be sticking around. Some brighter spells at times, once again the far north of Scotland, perhaps at times down across the southeast, but otherwise a fair amount of cloud around and quite breezy at times around coastal areas. But on the whole, largely dry, once again some rain and drizzle across the hills, but otherwise a fairly settled day on offer and turning a little bit warmer across the country too, particularly in the south and southeast. We're looking at highs of around 17 to 18 Celsius. Into the evening, it will turn more and more unsettled. We'll see some showers, some longer spells of rain creeping up from the south. This will be heavy at times, and that leads us into an unsettled day on Wednesday. Drier and cooler on Thursday, but likely turning wet and windy towards the end of the week.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Queues in Somerset for the northbound side of the M5, Taunton up to Bridgewater South. That's junction 25 to 24. The two lanes are out there at the scene of a collision causing queues. In Crediton in Devon, the Exeter Road. Now that's the A377, closed both ways. A bus and a lorry in a coming together there, no way through between Station Road and East Street causing queues. Congestion to northbound A34, closed from the M4 junction 13, that's Cheveley Newbury, up towards the Chiltern interchange, that collision causing delays. Long queues clockwise M25 at junction 27, follows an earlier bump but all lanes open. And the southbound M23, the slip road coming off at Crawley at 10, closed. An overturned vehicle is heavy back to Gatwick Airport at junction 9, and that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We love luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. on this Monday afternoon, and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, Britain is open for business. Well, that's what the Prime Minister has us believe. He's pledging to get rid of regulations that are holding back investments in Britain. We'll also be crossing Lyre to Chancellor Rachel Reeves in the next half an hour to hear how much money has been raised at today's investment. And data seen exclusive by GB News shows that an astonishing 250,000 immigrants have been let into the UK since 2021 without even a basic criminal background check. An astonishing report. I'll be joined by its author, who claims we've got no idea who walks amongst us. And John Caldwell, the billionaire Phones 4U founder, reckons Sir Keir Starmer should be paid £300,000 per year. And that's almost double his current salary. Well, I'll be joined by the mobile tycoon to find out why he thinks the PM's salary deserves a signal boost. And in 2017, Millwall fan Roy Larner risked his life and saved an estimated 30 people when he heroically attacked an ISIS terrorist during the London Bridge terror attack. And now they're making a movie about the Lion of London Bridge's life. Today, I'll be joined by Heroic Roy and the director, Dougie Brimson, for his first major TV interview, and that's all coming between now and 6 p.m. Well, it's a pleasure always. It's always a pleasure to have your company on the show. In about 20 minutes' time, Rachel Reeves is estimated to give her speech announcing the top-line figure we hear of how much investment has come into Britain over the course of today's conference. Do you have much faith in Britain's economy? We keep being told there's a massive, massive black hole. We keep being told we're massively in debt. Nobody knows what's coming in terms of tax rises on October the 30th. Hardly the most confidence-inspiring backdrop for getting billionaires to dip into their pockets. Talking of which, later on in the show, I'll speak to John Caldwell, the Phones 4U tycoon, who thinks that Keir Starmer should have double his salary. Really, I think a lot of people might be asking for their money back. Now, send your views. Get in touch the usual way. GBNews.com/your say. But first, it's your headlines, and here's Mark White.
Good afternoon. At 4:02, the main headlines from the GB News Centre. Stansted Airport is to undergo a massive transformation as part of a £1.1 billion investment. The 5-year construction programme will expand the main terminal by a third and see the existing building refurbished. The development will create 5,000 new jobs and also deliver a 14,000 megawatt solar farm on site, which will help power the airport's infrastructure. Well, the plans were unveiled by the Prime Minister at the flagship International Investment Summit in London. 4 US tech firms also used the summit to announce plans to invest £6.3 billion in data centre infrastructure in the UK. Well, the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, said the UK was a highly attractive country to invest in.
Our country is a great place to come and do business, and today's investment summit is all about that, making clear that we're open to the world and we welcome new investment. And there's been a number of big announcements today demonstrating our commitment and business kind of in confidence in what we're delivering.
The perfume bottle carrying the Russian nerve agent that killed a Salisbury woman contained enough poison to kill thousands of people. The official Novichok inquiry heard how 44-year-old Dawn Sturgis died in hospital hours after coming into contact with the nerve agent. She'd collapsed at her boyfriend's home on the 30th of June 2018 after the pair found the discarded perfume bottle in a local park. The nerve agent had been used in a bid to murder former spy Sergei Skripal. His daughter Yulia and a local police officer also fell seriously ill. Russia denies any involvement and has described the inquiry as a circus. A jury at the Old Bailey has been told how the father of Sarah Sharif fled to Pakistan after allegedly killing the 10-year-old, and then he called police to say, "I legally punished her," and she died. Sarah's father, Irfan Sharif, her stepmother and uncle are on trial accused of killing her. Her body was discovered at her home in Woking in Surrey in August last year. The defendants have pleaded not guilty to her murder and to causing or allowing the death of a child. The police firearms officer who shot London man Chris Kaba has told a jury he thought one of his colleagues was about to die when he opened fire. Giving evidence in public for the first time at the Old Bailey, PC Martin Blake said he was filled with dread after the Audi Mr Kaba was driving moved backwards and forwards as police officers surrounded the car. PC Blake fatally shot the 24-year-old through the windscreen of the car in Streatham in southeast London in September 2022. The officer is accused of murder, which he denies. The FBI is investigating whether a man caught with loaded weapons near a Donald Trump rally at the weekend was part of another attempted assassination. Local police arrested the man carrying multiple weapons and fake passports as he attempted to get into the Trump rally in California. The 49-year-old Las Vegas resident denied wanting to hurt the former president and was released on bail. The local county sheriff said the suspect was likely to be a sovereign citizen, someone who doesn't believe in government control. 4 IDF soldiers have been killed and more than 60 wounded in a drone strike on an army base in northern Israel. It's the deadliest attack on a military base since Israel stepped up attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon last month. The Lebanese terror group have claimed responsibility for the attack. It comes as the UN peacekeeping mission in Lebanon says Israeli tanks forcibly entered its base in the south of the country. The Lebanese Health Ministry said 51 people were killed by Israeli airstrikes across the country yesterday. And finally, the snowman is being depicted on a new Royal Mint 50p coin with a one-off gold version hidden in one of its advent calendars. As part of the launch of the collectible coin, a solid gold 50p piece has been hidden behind door 24 in just one limited edition. The coins commemorate the much-loved character immortalised in the books and films of Raymond Briggs. Well, another much-loved character who definitely won't melt on you is Martin Daubney.
Mark White, thank you for that gracious intro. Now, the Prime Minister has set out his plans to rip up red tape in a bid to woo global investors at his first International Investment Summit today. Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, is set to speak in about 20 minutes' time. We'll bring you that live as it happens. But first, ahead of that speech, let's cross to GB News' political editor, Chris Hope, who is live from the Investment Summit. Chris, welcome back to the show. So, all eyes on the Chancellor due to speak in around about 10 minutes' time. What do we think is going to be announced? Are we to hear the big figure, the headline figure? How much money have people coughed up today?
Around £60 billion worth of deals, Martin, announced or unveiled here at the Guildhall. Rachel Reeves is quite upbeat. When I met her earlier, and the interview plays out at 5 o'clock, she's someone who thinks that they want to clear away red tape. I mean, close your eyes, Martin. You could imagine Liz Truss or one of the Tories from the last government saying similar things. I mean, here's the Prime Minister just about a few hours ago when he spoke to investors here. He said, "We'll make every regulator in this country, especially our economic and competition regulators, take growth as seriously as this room does." He wants to, where he finds it needlessly holding back investment, he wants to take this country forward and look at regulation across the piece. This is language which the Tories would have said in the old days and Labour would have attacked. It's funny, isn't it, what power can do? Perhaps they've recognised that some red tape gets in the way of growth. Now, one area where the government they would say it was wrong was on the dreadful events, the tragedy at Grenfell Tower, when of course it's seen now that a cutback in or lack of watching over building regulations meant that it wasn't safe for the people there who of course tragically died. So they clearly won't go too far on cutting red tape, but that is what they're doing. That's what they're announcing here. They're trying to sound much more and more like the Tory party in terms of promoting growth that way.
Chris, isn't this all a bit cart before the horse, though? Because until the October the 30th budget, nobody knows what the landscape of United Kingdom PLC is. Nobody knows corporation tax. Nobody knows there's going to be that much suspected hint in national insurance rates for employers. No one knows very much at all about the potential conundrums or even problems that might come at them. Should they not have held this conference after October the 30th?
You know, there's many things they should have held after this budget on October 30th. The reason why it's 16 weeks after the election is because of this need to get the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, to check over the books, make sure there's nothing to spook the markets. The debt markets are watching the UK quite closely presently, and that's why they've delayed for it. Back in 1997, it was something like 6 weeks after the budget day, and often it's very, very quick in short order because the budget, the tax and spending plans announced in the budget set the tone for the entire following 5 years or 4 years of government. And I do really feel that what we've had so far is the hors d'oeuvre before the feast, which we'll see on October 30th. Maybe the trailers before the big movie, because I think that's the point at which this government has to get motoring, or it's stuck in reverse gear where it is at the moment.
Chris, I always like your metaphors. It's either going to be a feast, it's going to be a popcorn. What if that movie is called Starmageddon? A lot of people are expecting there to be bad tax rises, and that's hardly going to steady the nerves of the investors, is it? Surely, until we know those rates, just to repeat again, people are going to be very, very trepidatious about dipping into their kitties to invest in Britain.
Well, that's right. We do know that corporation tax is capped at 25%. Of course, it could come down. Many would argue, voted for Brexit back in 2016, having a more competitive or perhaps a more ambitious corporation tax rate, more where Ireland is at the moment, might attract more investment. That, well, it won't get any higher than 25%, but that's pretty high in terms of kind of where other countries are. What's the point of leaving the European Union if we won't try and offer a more attractive tax rate to inward investors? So there's lots of questions here, I think, for the Chancellor. We'll be hearing her speak shortly on stage here at this Guildhall event. And then it's set at 5 p.m. today, Martin. You know and I do. There's a big interview dropping on GB News.
That's right. I know you asked a superb question about slavery reparations, Chris. I'm all coiled like a cobra waiting for that. Thank you. And we'll join you shortly after the speech as well. Chris Hope, always a pleasure and never a chore. I'm joined now in the studio by the founder of Britain Remade, Sam Richards. Sam, thanks for coming in.
Good to be here.
Tell the viewers about Britain Remade and what you'd like to see from today's announcement.
So Britain Remade is a campaign for economic growth. What do we mean by that? We want to make it easier to build stuff. New clean energy to cut our energy bills, new transport links to make it easier to see friends and family, and the new homes that we need to get young people on the housing ladder. And what we've heard from the Prime Minister this morning is very encouraging. He set out that there was a wind farm off the Norfolk coast that had a planning document, or rather it was not one document of 4,000 pages, that had to go through 4,000 separate planning documents in order to get up and running. And then even when they'd been through that process, they had a 2-year delay due to judicial review. So we're going to hear lots of big numbers coming out of the Chancellor's speech this afternoon. But it's all well and good having all these different funding pots if they can't actually be invested in building the stuff. So the cutting of the red tape, the removing of the barriers to building, that is what is going to get the economy growing and get the investment flowing.
That sounds great, but we've heard this story before. We've heard it from practically every government in the last 20 years. Planning regulations always seem to get in the way, seem to stop house building, and we've got chronic shortage now, prices through the roof, and meanwhile, immigration has been up 2.1 million in the Tory government alone. No signs of that stopping. Are you sure that that's the answer? Just cutting red tape seems like it's going to be quite a long time, quite slow.
Look, as part of our campaign, we've been right across the country talking to clean energy firms in a blizzard in the Port of Blythe, and talking to people who used to work in the old nuclear power plant in Anglesey, and right across Britain. Everyone is saying, all these builders, all these innovators, all these businesses are saying the #1 barrier to building the new energy that we need, the new transport links that we need, the new homes that we need, is our broken planning system. So we can fix that. We can go a long way to fixing a lot of the problems that Britain currently faces.
What was the problem with the old energy that we had? I mean, we've got our own gas supplies. Labour's attitude seems to be to just stop oil. We've just stopped coal recently. We've closed down Ratcliffe-on-Soar Power Station, Port Talbot. We're closing everything down. Why do we need to rely on a new energy source that requires building new pylons we don't particularly need to get the energy from new sites to where it's required? When we had what we had was working. Why, if it was not broken, why try and fix it?
Well, we import about half of the gas that we use, and because we are reliant on imports, and that is, by the way, that is not a result of the fact that we're turning away from the North Sea. We are draining the North Sea dry. We're trying to get everything that we can out of there, and we should use it where we can. But we import about half of the gas that we use. And that reliance on imports meant that when international prices spiked after Putin's invasion of Ukraine, all of our bills spiked dramatically as well. So if we can get on to reliable British nuclear power, as well as cheap offshore wind and onshore wind, then we can bring down bills for consumers and also for businesses, which, by the way, will make it a more attractive place for high energy intensive businesses to invest.
Maybe we should just try and harness all the hot air in Westminster. That might be a good start. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Thank you for your company. That's the founder of Britain Remade, Sam Richards. Thank you. Now, stay with us, because we'll be crossing live to Rachel Reeves as she gives that big speech at the Investment Summit. We can't wait, and I know you can't too. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Some controversial film news. Someone has hired an actor who's white. What the hell is going on?
Let me just fix my hair. Let me just come on. So, Wuthering Heights film stirs controversy after white actor, he's white, chosen to play...
Is that your Humza Yusuf impersonator?
That is, yes, that's my Chinese accent. Experts have gone, oh no, there's a lot of... In recent years, he's definitely black or mixed race because he was found in Liverpool. And, as you know, everybody in Liverpool is black or mixed race.
No, I mean, have you read the novel?
God, no.
Right, well, I have. And the novel itself does say, quite explicitly, that he is dark-skinned. Yeah. That the implication is that he's of Romani origin. So he wouldn't be whiter than white, you know. So, I mean...
that's fine. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that casting... But on the other hand...
This guy's Spanish. His origin is Spanish.
Do you remember when there was a black Anne Boleyn for a Channel 5 miniseries? That seems to be more egregious, because, I tell you what, Anne Boleyn definitely wasn't black.
You racist. No, I almost feel sorry in this story, because you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't now. Because if they'd have, it's not like he's a bit of an anti-hero, right? It's not like a good all-round.
He's not a good guy.
So if you go, right, we definitely need to cast someone black for this. What? Why are you picking just black people to play someone with so many character flaws? Or you go, why?
Like they did with Darth Vader.
Yes, that's right.
He was played by the Green Cross Code Man. Okay. Just the voice was done by...
That's true. Yeah. Yes, it was the Green Cross Code Man. I wonder what they were saying there.
Have you ever seen the videos of the original audio Star Wars?
No.
So you've got... I can't remember his name, but you've got the Green Cross Code Man going like, you find your lack of faith disturbing. Yeah. No, Luke, I am your father.
They should have left it as it was.
This is the difference to me. We're talking about Star Wars. You're like, oh, have you read Bronte, Wuthering, whatever?
She only wrote one novel, Josh. You could... do with the courtesy of reading it.
I'll read it straight after I finish your one.
And it's actually brilliant.
The People's Channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top two for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, on Thursday as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. this Thursday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's approaching 4:20. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, we're in great anticipation as the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is about to address the Investment Summit. But ahead of that, I'm joined now in the studio by the Head of Research at the Taxpayers Alliance, Darwin Friend, and the founder of Britain Remade, Sam Richards, who, of course, spoke before the break. Gentlemen, welcome. Darwin, let's start with you. I put the same question to Sam earlier. Why are we having this conference now? Surely we should be having it after October 30th. Nobody knows the tax landscape that will be in existence after that point.
Well, that's a real question, Martin, and thank you for having me on the show. I mean, it's welcome that the government clearly is interested in investment, but you pose the right question, is all of the decisions that businesses are going to be making are going to be reliant on what the government does at the end of October at the budget. And if they're going to increase taxes on capital gains tax or introduce new regulations, then none of that's going to happen until after the budget. And that's really when this investment conference should have happened.
And the national insurance hike, which they wouldn't deny earlier on today, so that means it's going to happen. So employers will be paying more national insurance, and that will clearly impact the number of employees they would likely take on. If you're a massive corporation, these are massive costs. Again, it makes it much, much harder to make any of those kind of decisions until you know the taxation landscape.
Exactly, and I think that's the really worrying thing about what they could do at the budget is this employers' national insurance hike. Because as you say, it's going to hit big businesses, of course, who bring in a lot of tax revenue for the government and employ a lot of people in this country. But not just that, it's going to hit small businesses as well. If you own a hair salon, for example, and you employ 3 or 4 people, and maybe you want to employ another one, you're now not going to be able to because you simply can't afford that level of tax hike. So not only is it going to hit the big players in this, but it's also going to hit small and micro businesses throughout the country.
And what are you hearing from high net worth individuals out there? We hear all the time about a record number of millionaires fleeing the country, others looking to follow suit, people trying to cash in their pension pots ahead of this much anticipated lowering of that threshold to 100 grand. The grouse seem to be spooked.
Exactly, and I saw a survey actually earlier today that showed that 25% of businesses surveyed said that they were already fast-tracking their plans to get rid of their businesses in advance of the budget so that then they can avoid any capital gains tax rise as has been suggested, where it could go up to 30 or 39% even.
OK, and quickly, I think Rachel Reeves is just about to take the stage. Ahead of that, Sam, tell us, what are you looking for in terms of building targets? We need more houses. How many?
We do need more homes. They've committed to 1.5 million. They'll do very well to get there.
OK, I have to interrupt because we can now cross live to Chancellor Rachel Reeves addressing the International Investment Summit in central London.
40,000 jobs in the UK. That is a sign of the confidence that we now see in the British economy. And this investment will support the growth of businesses, big and small, helping them create new jobs, invest in new technology, and play their crucial role in this government's #1 mission: to grow the economy by being the most pro-business government that this country has ever seen. Now, we will only succeed in this mission if government and business work hand in hand to unlock the huge potential that I know that we have as a country. In our first 100 days in office, we've already begun to put those words into action. Policies to grow our economy developed and delivered alongside business. Removing the blockages in our planning system. Ending the ban on onshore wind so that we can deliver homegrown clean energy. Delivering the Basel reforms to help our financial services sector, working with the devolved administrations, mayors and regional partners to give them the powers that they need to grow their economies, resetting our relationship with our closest partners in the European Union, whilst also developing a new trade strategy and re-energising engagement with significant and fast-growing economies, from India to China, and with our partners in the Gulf, and reforming our pension system to release investment. This is just a taste of what we've achieved in the last few months and where our priorities lie in the months ahead. And today, at this summit, we are sending a message for all to hear. We're ending years of instability and uncertainty. We are bringing investment and jobs back to this country. Britain is open for business once again. Now, I understand that for every business, stability is the foundation of success. In the next fortnight, I will be finalising my first budget as Chancellor of the Exchequer. And the situation that we have inherited means that we face difficult choices. The first step that we must take to grow our economy is to restore fiscal and economic stability. Because balancing the books by ensuring that we do not borrow for day-to-day spending is not anti-investment. In fact, it is the only way to ensure that government and business can invest with confidence. Discipline on spending, alongside investment in capital, is absolutely essential. The investment which government makes must be sustainable, with debt falling by the end of the forecast. It must provide good value for taxpayers' money, and it must be fully transformative so that we grow our economy in the years ahead. And it must crowd in funding from all of you, from the private sector too. Because investment means more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. It means that our start-ups can scale up and grow here in Britain. And it means good, well-paid jobs right across our country, like the £225 million investment from SEA, creating 750 jobs in state-of-the-art turbine production in Teesside. Or £200 million invested by Associated British Ports and Stena Line, creating 200 new jobs in Humberside. Or the £325 million investment from Holtec to help harness nuclear power, creating nearly 2,000 jobs in South Yorkshire. These investments, and many more like them, are at the heart of the Britain that we are building. So I will deliver a balanced approach at the budget on the 30th of October. Fiscal and economic stability, investment over decline, in a budget that will protect living standards, repair our NHS, and fix the foundations of our economy so we can build a stronger Britain. A critical part of that growth plan will be our approach to business taxation. We need to get this right, to balance the books while doing everything we can to drive growth and promote entrepreneurship, to create a tax system which supports wealth creation and increases business investment. That is our objective. And I know that providing certainty is right at the heart of that. The constant changes that we have seen in corporation tax in recent years have caused instability. So at the budget, this government will be outlining a corporate tax roadmap. We will cap the rate of corporation tax at 25%, the lowest in the G7 for the duration of this Parliament. We will maintain a world-leading capital allowances offer with full expensing and the £1 million annual investment allowance. And we will maintain the current rates for the research and development reliefs, which provide generous support for innovation. This is a vital step to deliver certainty and support businesses to grow. I also know that the detail here is important. You came to London not just for warm words, certainly not for warm weather, but you came because you want to understand how we will achieve our plans, how we will harness the opportunities of the future, whether that's the transition to net zero, advances in AI and digital technology, or building on our strengths in financial services. You've already heard today from the Prime Minister and also from the Business Secretary. The Prime Minister set out our plans to make Britain the best place in the world to invest, through economic and fiscal stability, a focus on Britain's standing in the world, and by working with regulators to put investment and growth at the heart of their work. The Business Secretary launched our new industrial strategy green paper, setting out the 8 sectors where we know that the UK has huge strengths and where we can do more to seize the opportunities of the future. Now I will set out further detail on 2 more steps we are taking to unlock long-term private investment. When I became Chancellor of the Exchequer, I made my first big speech 3 days later about the importance of growing our economy. I set out our plans to launch a new National Wealth Fund, designed in partnership with business through the National Wealth Task Force led by Mark Carney. Today, we are creating the National Wealth Fund and making it the UK's new impact investor. The National Wealth Fund will catalyse tens of billions of pounds of private investment into clean energy and our growth industries, like green hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, and gigafactories. From today, we are turbocharging the UK Infrastructure Bank, which will now operate as the National Wealth Fund. It will be headquartered in Leeds with a bigger team, more freedom and an expanded suite of financial instruments and more economic risk capital to ensure that the National Wealth Fund's investments can be even more catalytic. The National Wealth Fund will work with industry partners, including our metro mayors, to identify innovative transactions and deliver new impactful investments right across our country. We will also bring forward legislation to give the National Wealth Fund a broader mandate, extending beyond infrastructure so it aligns with our new industrial strategy. The National Wealth Fund will also work alongside the UK's existing structures to better crowd in private investment. The British Business Bank deployed £3.5 billion to support over 23,000 businesses last year. But we need innovative vehicles that go further and faster, to leverage investment from new sources, like our pension funds, and to improve returns for savers and help our most exciting businesses to grow. If we want businesses here, not just to start up, but to scale up, we need to unlock long-term patient capital from private investors. To do that, we cannot just rely on old methods. So today, we are setting out our plans for the British Business Bank to take a more innovative approach through a new pathfinder, British Growth Partnership. This will create a new vehicle to crowd in pension funds and other institutional investment into venture capital funds and innovative businesses. The British Business Bank is aiming to raise hundreds of millions of pounds and to make long-term investments on a fully commercial basis by the end of 2025. The government will invest alongside the private sector to crowd in funding, to ensure that the British Growth Partnership delivers on this government's objectives, to increase capital for companies, deliver better outcomes for savers, and to boost economic growth. When we said that this government would end instability, when we said that we would make growth our national mission, and when we said that we would enter a true partnership with business, we meant it. In the last 100 days, we have put unlocking private investment at the heart of everything that we do. And today we have set out more than £60 billion of shovel-ready investments right across our country. Those aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. It means new high-skilled jobs, from Aberdeenshire in Scotland, to Blythe in Northumberland, to Erin in North Wales, and many more places in between, with announcements on our new industrial strategy, a new investment minister, the creation of the National Wealth Fund, and an innovative British Growth Partnership. We are delivering on our growth mission, hand in hand with business. The decisions that lie ahead will not always be easy, but by making the right choices to grow our economy, to drive investment, we will create good jobs and new opportunities across every part of our country. That is the Britain that we are building, and that is the difference that we will make together. Thank you so much for being part of it today. Thank you.
And that was Rachel Reeves there delivering at the International Investment Summit in central London. This was their big pitch to business, big pitch to the business community, not only in Britain but around the world. Come to Britain. Business is open. Well, let's get some reaction back in the studio, listening in eagerly. My two experts with hawk-like ears, the head of research at the Taxpayers Alliance, Darwin Friend, and the founder of Britain Remade, Sam Richards. Gentlemen, you're still here. You were listening with bated breath, no doubt. Let's start by picking over a couple of the key phrases. Let's get rid of the flannel, get rid of the word salads, get rid of the David Brent type speak, and let's just pick out a couple of key points. Darwin, opening gambit, big statement to make. We are the most pro-business economy that this country has ever seen. True or false?
Well, it's false, and I wish it were true, but as the Chancellor just said, they may have put a freeze on corporation tax, but they're freezing it at 25%, which is 6 percentage points more than it was just over a year ago when it was 19%, and that had been held at that level for about 6 or 7 years. Now, we've shown in the past that when we cut corporation tax, the tax revenues from it go up. So whilst I commend the fact that she wants more growth, she wants more investment, but the actions simply aren't proving the pudding right. They are keeping corporation tax high. They're going to potentially increase capital gains tax. And to top it off, they're going to potentially increase employers' national insurance as well. That's not going to increase growth. It's not going to increase investment in the UK.
Darwin, there are those amongst us who went to Brussels to try and get Brexit done. And one of the key strategies was to untether ourselves from taxation policies across the European Union, to be quick, to be nimble, to be able to self-determine, get rid of the level playing field. And yet, Ireland has a corporation tax rate, what is it, 13%?
Yeah.
Cyprus, in fact, P&O, who were reluctant to turn up today, they cleared off to Cyprus because their rate was 13%. Surely, if you want to be the most pro-business economy that this country's ever seen, you cut corporation tax.
Exactly. I mean, all we do with having these higher rates of corporation tax is we push businesses away from this country and into the arms of other countries that are happy to have lower levels of corporation tax and other forms of taxation. You mentioned Ireland. You mentioned Cyprus. Those are two great examples where they've taken businesses that were in the UK before and now they're getting those receipts. And ultimately, I think the message that we need to all remember at the end of this is it's not about having the highest level of corporation tax possible. It's about having the optimal level of corporation tax to raise the most revenues, which can ultimately be spent on the public services that taxpayers and your listeners all need and rely on.
Sam Richards, you were frantically making notes there. A series of announcements made, the £60 billion of investments, including from SEAT, from the Associated British Ports. Was there anything new in the stuff you heard today?
Let's be honest, there wasn't anything new today. Partly that's a function of the timing, as you've set out, that we still have the budget to come and we'll know more about the future tax rates. And we also still have the details of the planning and infrastructure bill, which is really going to set out the detail of whether they're going to cut through this red tape that is stopping us from building stuff. But, you know, the Chancellor set out some of the low-hanging fruit that they have picked already, which is welcome, like the lifting of that nonsensical ban on onshore wind. But she talked about removing the blockages in our planning system. And it's worth your viewers being aware of the fact that currently one of the biggest blockages in the planning system are ministers. That infrastructure decisions are being further delayed by the decisions of government ministers. 4 out of 10, 40% of our current major infrastructure projects have been punted into the long grass by the government. So they, you know, there's the detail to come in their big planning reforms, but they themselves now can remove some of the blockages in our planning system.
Darwin, it was dangled that we should be excited by the National Wealth Fund. They will have a new HQ in Leeds. Well, I'm seeing another massive new office in a metropolitan area packed full of civil servants. It'll be turbocharged. It'll be catalytic. Again, lots of buzzwords. Can I ask you, is there any evidence that devolving power to councils, you talk about partnering with mayors, we're led to believe all the time that mayors are better at making financial decisions, local decisions for local people. Is there any evidence that that's true? Or actually, are we better off having a proper, centralised, overseeing system to spend the money? In short, if we give more money to local areas, to mayors to spend, or they're more likely to blow it. Half the councils in Britain seem to be bankrupt.
Well, you're right to say that. We are seeing a lot of councils suddenly issuing Section 114 notices declaring bankruptcy. And there are some cases where, yes, it's right that local authorities, devolved administrations, should have some form of revenue-raising power, should have some money to afford to pay for local services. But the issue is that there's so many layers of local government now to try and get through, and every single one of them seems to be able to appeal planning processes and things that are ultimately blocking growth in this country. So I sometimes do think that what we actually need is to cut away some of these levels of bureaucracy, have a simpler system, and that will encourage growth and make simply planning decisions, which is what the growth is reliant upon, actually happen.
Right, so Darwin Friend and Sam Richards, we have to leave it there for the meantime. Let's cross now to GB News political editor Chris Hope from that Investment Summit. Chris, welcome back to the show. So my two experts in the studio said there's nothing new in that speech, and it doesn't particularly tell us that Britain is the most pro-business economy that this country has ever seen. In fact, 6 percentile points corporation tax higher than just a few years ago for starters.
That's right, Martin. Yeah, welcome back to the Guildhall. You heard the Rachel Reeves set out some measures we knew were going to come in the budget. They're going to keep capping corporation tax at 25%. Well, there'll be a roadmap of where that tax might go. It sounds like she might try and set out corporation tax at that kind of level for 5 years. That feels where they're going with that policy. Also, there'll be issues of full expensing. There'll be some R&D measures. So you heard some of the kind of plumbing of the budget revealed by Rachel Reeves there. The stuff that we normally overlook in the budget, but the stuff that's really important to big investors was what she talked about there from Rachel Reeves. She made very clear, though, what they are really focusing towards October 30th. In a sense, that speech was all about looking forward into that budget because it's so important to these investors.
Here's Sam Richards at Britain Remade, went through all the announcements there. We've sort of heard them all before, the 60 billion quid's worth of investment. This is reheating previous cold offerings. When are we going to see some fresh food on the table, some fresh fruit?
I mean, arguably, many of those deals were new deals, or at least newly confirmed by the government. Some of them we knew about. The Stansted £1 billion investment announced by the PM in November last year. But other ones, there is fresh meat for you there, Martin, to get stuck into, the government would say. We heard there from the Chancellor there saying to us that what they're trying to use here is lever off the value of their big number of MPs they won back in July, that landslide. They're trying to show companies, look, we are now here for the 5-year term. We are here for 5 years, and here's the direction of travel for the investing environment.
Well, we heard a lot of talk there about roadmaps, about turbocharging, about catalytic. It sounded more like the Top Gear convention, the Labour Party convention. Is this part of the problem? We get lots of management speak, lots of David Brent stuff, and we're still, I think, waiting for that big, new, gleaming model to be unveiled. Perhaps that will come after October 30th. Chris, thank you very much. We're going to come back to you, of course, after your big exclusive interview, not exclusive, big sit-down with Rachel Reeves just after 5 o'clock. Thank you very much for joining us there from that summit. Now, moving on, thank you to Sam and to Darwin. Moving on, time is ticking on your chance to win £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway. And here are all the details.
On demand. Good luck.
Coming up next, I'll be joined by John Caldwell, the billionaire Phones For You founder, who reckons Sir Keir Starmer should have his pay doubled to 300 grand a year. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
We shouldn't have to do this, Rebecca. These men should have been compensated long ago.
They shouldn't have to fight for recognition. And this is what's happened over the last 72 years. So all the way through from the test through to the present day, they've known that something happened to them. They've seen what they've been through, their medical conditions, the fact that many of these servicemen died well before their time. And they were ignored in a way that other countries didn't ignore their similar testing veterans. So other nuclear powers across the world, the US, for example, compensated and recognised their nuclear testing veterans many, many years ago. Yet, unfortunately, successive governments in the UK failed to do that. After the long campaign for medallic recognition, finally, these servicemen received medallic recognition, but it came in a jiffy bag in the post, which is not the way to honour the service that these men gave to our country. There needs to be an understanding and an uncovering of the truth of what they actually went through. They've been fighting for many years for access to their medical records, for example, urine and blood tests that they know were taken during their service. But when many of these families have tried to access their records, these test results seem to be missing, and there's no explanation as to why this has happened.
What basis does the Ministry of Defence say it's not our responsibility?
Well, we know from other studies across the world and subsequent studies, it showed, staggeringly that these men were exposed to the same amount of radiation as clean-up workers at Chernobyl.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:47 on this Monday afternoon. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, Phones for You founder John Caldwell has said that he thinks it would be reasonable for Sir Keir Starmer to be paid around £300,000 a year. And will that finally stop the Prime Minister taking freebies left, right and centre? Well, we're just trying to get a link with the businessman and the founder of Phones for You, John Caldwell. But ahead of that, let's have a little look over what he reckons should happen. So the big conversation is the Prime Minister, for being the PM and for being an MP, currently gets £167,000 per year. Now, is that enough? A lot of people in ordinary jobs are paid more than that. When I say ordinary jobs, I mean in private enterprise. It's a big salary, of course, but council leaders often get more than the Prime Minister. NHS trust heads get paid more than the Prime Minister. The point I think John Caldwell is trying to make is to run the country, he is saying, as the founder of Phones for You, if the country was treated like a business and he were the CEO, he believes that a salary of about £300,000 is about right for running the country. A lot of people get paid a lot more than that for running private corporations. He also went on to say that if the Prime Minister was paid more, it might stop him taking freebies. Now, do you buy that? Do you buy the notion that a Prime Minister who's on 170 grand almost, and don't forget, on top of that, they get their mortgages and their rent paid, they get the heating on their second allowance, on their second homes, they also get to claim back for taxes, for all sorts of sundry expenses, so they do pretty well. But is the point pay more, the thick end of 300 grand, and that would stop the PM's eye wandering? He wouldn't need to take free suits. He wouldn't need to take passers for glasses from Lord Alley. He wouldn't need to be going to Taylor Swift on the QT. He'd be able to afford to buy his own tickets if you paid him more. Do you think that's a fair assumption to do? Or are they already paid enough? Now, there's another thing that John Caldwell came out with at the weekend I'd be keen to question him on, and that is he thinks it'd be acceptable to increase the top rate tax pay to 50% of your take. 50p in the pound for everyone in the top rate will be taken away by the government. He doesn't think that anybody would miss it. Well, he might say that because he's a billionaire. I put it to you, that's not quite the same for ordinary people. Now, if you can't get hold of John Caldwell in this hour, he's at that business conference. We will get him in the next hour. Until then, let's go through a few of your says. Your emails have come in. Jack says this. Difficult choices. This is about Rachel Reeves. Will her income go down? Will she be missing her second house winter fuel allowance? Will Rachel Reeves have to choose between eating or heating? Staying warm has now become a luxury for millions of pensioners thanks to this Chancellor. Jack adds, of course not. Rachel Reeves and her fellow grifters in the government, harsh words, won't want for anything. And if they do, they'll just have to call their Lord Sugar Daddy for help. Jack there being very cautious. But I think that's the point. Isn't it all fair and well for chancellors to say, we've all got to collectively tighten the belt, we're all in this together, where I get thousands of messages from pensioners who watch GB News every single week saying they don't feel at all like we're all in it together. We're getting stung by the government, and those who are poorest are getting hit hardest. Another message here from Grumpy Grandad. I think I know a couple of them in my time. Here's one saying, again, listening to Robot Reeves. Everything is great. The nation is booming and the future couldn't be better. Not the same doom and gloom they've been hammering us with. So what is the truth? That's a good point, Grumpy Grandad. You know, for the last few weeks, it's going to be, even from the Prime Minister, things are going to get worse. Never mind, things are going to get better. From the Tony Blair years, things will get worse. We're £22 billion in the stuck, and you lot are going to have to pay for it. And suddenly, we're the best country in the world to do business in. Come to Britain. We're open for business. We've got a great tax regime, and you can trust us. Well, these are two very, very different pictures. Grumpy Grandad, I think you've nailed it. Tizy, as this, not Richard Tice, I hope, no, Tizy with an S, says, yep, it's quite clear that Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are both robots. That word keeps coming out. We've been taken over by aliens from another universe. Well, Tizy, I think that's a bit harsh. They would say that their heart is in it. They got the best for the country. And talking of which, just after the news at 5 o'clock, Rachel Reeves sat down with our political editor, Chris Hope, and I asked him to ask her on your behalf. The conversation has been around slavery reparations first. They gave away the Chagos Islands. A lot of the talk then was what next? Gibraltar, the Falklands. I said on this show, you watch, it'll be slavery reparations. And call me Mystic Martin. That's precisely what's happening. That conversation is on the table because, of course, David Lammy, who's now the Foreign Secretary, is very much of the mindset that Britain should be punished, should be made to pay for those historical so-called wrongdoings. What's the figure? Could be trillions of pounds. How would that help with the £22 billion black hole? That question was put to Rachel Reeves by Chris Hope on your behalf, and you'll be able to see that just after 5 o'clock. You will not want to miss it. Before we go, here is an email from Linda. You'll say, I've got faith in Rachel Reeves. She will get us out of the black hole. Linda, there we go. A nice bit of balance on the show. Linda, are you related to the Chancellor? But on a serious point, we've got a good balanced email there. We're going to be back shortly. As I say, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, in conversation with Chris Hope, our political editor. Will we be paying slavery reparations? Will the national insurance for employers be going through the roof? Will that be a nightmare for small businesses? That and more to come in an expansive conversation coming up. And also coming up in the next hour, in 2017, Millwall fan Roy Larner risked his life and saved an estimated 30 lives when he heroically attacked an ISIS terrorist during the London Bridge terror attack. And now they're making a movie about the Lion of London Bridge's life, and I'll be joined by him on the show. Can't wait for that. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now here's your weather with Honor.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, heading into tonight and tomorrow, it's often going to be cloudy with some rain and drizzle. There will be some clearer and brighter spells in the north, though, and feeling rather mild in the south. Some showers and longer spells of rain across the far northwest of Scotland and in the southeast of the UK. But this clearing away now as that frontal system drifts towards Europe. It is leaving behind, though, plenty of clouds, still with some drips and drabs of rain and drizzle, mainly across hilly areas. And this cloud will move its way northwards across the country, bringing a fairly cloudy night to come. There are plenty of clear spells in the far north of Scotland, and that's where it's going to be feeling cold under those clearer skies, but elsewhere still a fairly cool night on offer, but mild in the far south. So to start Tuesday then, there will be plenty of clearer spells in north of Scotland. Quite a cold start, perhaps some pockets of mist and fog and some frost in rural spots too. But otherwise it is going to be largely cloudy, still with those drips and drabs of rain and drizzle, once again just mainly over hilly areas, and a fairly cloudy and drab start across the rest of England and Wales.
Now, this leads us into a fairly dry day, but that cloud is going to be sticking around. Some brighter spells at times, once again, the far north of Scotland, perhaps at times down across the southeast, but otherwise a fair amount of cloud around and quite breezy at times around coastal areas. But on the whole, largely dry, once again, some rain and drizzle across the hills, but otherwise a fairly settled day on offer and turning a little bit warmer across the country too, particularly in the south and southeast. We're looking at highs of around 17 to 18 Celsius. Into the evening, it will turn more and more unsettled. We'll see some showers, some longer spells of rain creeping up from the south. This will be heavy at times, and that leads us into an unsettled day on Wednesday. Drier and cooler on Thursday, but likely turning wet and windy towards the end of the week.
Woo! A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. There's queues in Greater Manchester. Firstly, on the westbound M62, Eccles to Birchwood. That's junction 12 to 11. A collision means lane 1's blocked and queuing. That's the same story anti-clockwise in the M60. Two cars have had it coming together before Worsley 13 is queuing. Back to the M60 at 17. Northbound M1 around Luton 10 up to 11. Emergency repairs means delays and a lane shut. Westbound M4 around Brentford Junction 2. The entry slip road there's past blocked a broken down car causing delays. The southbound M23 exit slip coming off of Crawley at 10 remains closed, queuing back to Gatwick Airport at 9, an overturned vehicle. And big queues northbound M5 in Somerset, Taunton 25 up to 24. A collision, 2-lane shut, big delays.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's only 2 weeks. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, Britain's burning brighter than ever. Well, that's according to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, a moment ago. And our political editor, Christopher Hope, sat down earlier on with Rachel Reeves and asked her the big questions. We'll bring you that in the next few moments. And John Caldwell, the billionaire Phones 4U founder, reckons Sir Keir Starmer should be paid £300,000 per year, almost double his current salary. We'll be taking words from the mobile tycoon to find out why he thinks the PM's salary needs a big signal boost. And in 2017, Millwall fan Roy Lorne, the legend, risked his life and saved an estimated 30 people's lives when he heroically attacked an ISIS terrorist during the London Bridge terror attack. And now they're making a movie about the Lion of London Bridge's legendary life. And shortly on this show, I'll be joined by Heroic Roy for his first major TV interview and the director of the movie, Dougie Brimson. That's all coming up between now and 6 p.m. Welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have your company. So we've heard the rhetoric, we've heard the posturing, but where is the detail in Rachel Reeves's taxation plan? We won't know that perhaps until October the 30th, but we sat down with Rachel Reeves earlier on today and I asked the Chancellor on your behalf, Christopher Hope, in fact, put the question to her. Will the Labour Party be paying slavery reparations? Could total trillions of pounds, much mooted by people such as the Foreign Secretary David Lammy, who has a penchant for putting right the pages of history. Could be very, very pricey. We asked her, is there going to be any plans to pay that money? You will not want to miss the response. That's coming in about 6 or 7 minutes' time. Make sure you're sitting down with a cup of tea. Get in touch usual ways by going to gbnews.com/your say. But now it's time for your headlines, and here's Mark White.
Good evening. It's 5:02. The main headlines from the GB News Centre. Stansted Airport is to undergo a massive transformation as part of a £1.1 billion investment. The 5-year construction programme will expand the main terminal by a third and see the existing building refurbished. The development will create 5,000 new jobs and also deliver a 14-megawatt solar farm on site, which will help power the airport's infrastructure. The plans were unveiled by the Prime Minister at the flagship International Investment Summit in London. 4 US tech firms also used the summit to announce plans to invest £6.3 billion in data centre infrastructure in the UK. Well, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves told the summit Labour was determined to ensure the UK becomes a highly attractive country to invest in.
And this investment will support the growth of businesses, big and small, helping them create new jobs, invest in new technology, and play their crucial role in this government's #1 mission: to grow the economy by being the most pro-business government that this country has ever seen.
The perfume bottle carrying the Russian nerve agent that killed a Salisbury woman contained enough poison to kill thousands of people. The official Novichok inquiry heard how 44-year-old Dawn Sturgis died in hospital hours after coming into contact with the nerve agent. She'd collapsed at her boyfriend's home on the 30th of June 2018 after the pair found the discarded perfume bottle in a local park. The nerve agent had been used in a bid to murder former spy Sergei Skripal. His daughter Yulia and a local police officer also fell seriously ill. Russia denies any involvement and has described the inquiry as a circus. At least 18 people have been killed in what's believed to have been the first Israeli airstrike on a northern Lebanese town since the start of the current conflict with Hezbollah a year ago. Rescue teams have spent the day digging through rubble looking for survivors in the town of Eitu. Lebanese officials have blamed Israel for the attack, which would mark an expansion of the current conflict into the Christian-majority northern region. That strike comes less than a day after 4 IDF soldiers were killed and more than 60 others injured in a drone strike on a military base in northern Israel. The Hezbollah terror group has claimed responsibility for the attack. A jury at the Old Bailey has been told that the father of Sarah Sharif fled to Pakistan after allegedly killing the 10-year-old and then called police to say, "I legally punished her and she died." Sarah's father, Irfan Sharif, her stepmother and uncle are on trial accused of killing her. Her body was discovered at her home in Woking in Surrey in August last year. The defendants have pleaded not guilty to her murder and to causing or allowing the death of a child. The police firearms officer who shot London man Chris Kaba has told a jury he thought one of his colleagues was about to die when he opened fire. Giving evidence in public for the first time at the Old Bailey, PC Martin Blake said he was filled with dread as the Audi Mr Kaba was driving moved backwards and forwards at officers as they surrounded his car. PC Blake fatally shot the 24-year-old through the windscreen of the car in Streatham in south-east London in September 2022. The officer is accused of murder, which he denies. The FBI is investigating whether a man caught with loaded weapons near a Donald Trump rally at the weekend was part of another attempted assassination. Local police arrested the man carrying multiple weapons and fake passports as he attempted to get into the Trump rally in California. The 49-year-old Las Vegas resident denied wanting to hurt the former president and was released on bail. The local county sheriff said the suspect was likely to be a sovereign citizen, someone who doesn't believe in government control. And finally, the snowman is being depicted on a new Royal Mint 50p coin, as a one-off gold version will be hidden in one of its advent calendars. As part of the launch of the collectible coin, a solid gold 50p piece has been placed behind door 24 in just one limited edition. The coins commemorate the much-loved character immortalised in the books and films of Raymond Briggs. And those are your headlines for the moment. We're back with more in half an hour. In the meantime, it's back to Martin Daubney.
Thank you, Mark. Superb as ever. Now, Britain's burning brighter than ever. And that's according to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, earlier on today. And speaking at the UK International Investment Summit, Rachel Reeves told business leaders they can look forward to a true partnership with the new Labour government. Well, big claims from the Chancellor with the autumn budget just around the corner. And, of course, many surprises may still be within that. And GB News' political editor Christopher Hope spoke to Rachel Reeves a little earlier on today for us here at GB News.
Rachel Reeves, we're here at the International Investment Summit. We heard the PM there say he wants to rip out the bureaucracy that blocks investment, will march to institutions that make economic and competition regulators take growth seriously. But don't those bodies protect consumers? Are you willing to put that at risk?
The Prime Minister gave the example today of a wind farm that required 40,000 documents, not just pieces of paper, but separate documents to be able to get through the planning system. And then, when the 40,000 documents had been put in, there was a judicial review that delayed the project by a further 2 years. That is no good for the UK economy. It deters investment, it deters job creation, and in the end will result in higher energy bills for consumers.
But the CMA look after consumers, don't they? That's the point.
Well, I don't think that looked after consumers, and it didn't look after working people. So, of course, where regulations are necessary to protect people, and the Prime Minister gave the example, for example, of Grenfell Tower, where a lack of regulation failed people and a lack of adherence to regulation failed people. So you've got to look at the individual regulations. But where regulations just delay projects and increase the costs of those projects, we need to get a grip of that, because there's a global race going on for investments, whether it is in energy or in life sciences or in AI and tech. And I'm unashamed to say I want that investment and I want those jobs in Britain, and we'll do what it takes to bring them here.
Google CEO Eric Schmidt told the PM that you as a government might need a Minister for Anti-Regulation. Do you want one?
Well, actually, I didn't think that was a bad idea, and Johnny Reynolds and me exchanged a look at that at that moment. But look, this is a joined-up government where we're working across departments. My colleague Peter Kyle at the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology is already introducing an office for regulatory innovation to help new innovations get through the system and get sign-off. And that can be in a range of areas, from life sciences to tech and many more in between. So we want to take a new approach to regulation to make it easier for businesses to start up, to scale up, to grow, and then get permission to trade here in Britain.
We're 101 days into your government. You've hit the ground stumbling, it seems to me. Do you regret taking so long to have a budget? That's meant the government hasn't really started work yet.
Well, in my first week, I called in a number of planning decisions. I ended the moratorium on onshore wind. We set up the process of creating a national wealth fund, and we're announcing that that is now up and running today. We are doing a reform of our pension system to get better returns for people saving for their retirement, as well as unlocking money for entrepreneurs to start and scale up businesses in the UK. But it's important that we get our budget right. And that means taking time to go through the proper processes, for example, with the Independent Office of Budget Responsibility, to make sure all of our plans are fully funded and fully costed. People would rightly expect that of me as Chancellor, and that's what people will get when I deliver the budget on the 30th of October.
So on the budget, your manifesto says we will not increase national insurance, but you're looking at increasing employers' national insurance. Aren't you breaking your manifesto pledge with that?
Well, you've read our manifesto, and in black and white it said we will not increase taxes on working people, and that was national insurance, income tax and VAT.
But not employers?
That was not in the manifesto, and we will stick to everything in our manifesto, including, for example, capping corporation tax at its current level of 25% for the duration of this Parliament, so that businesses know when they make investments in Britain what returns they will get on their profits. That's a really important principle for me, that businesses know what returns they can make on their investments here in Britain.
Critics say you've talked down the economy for too much, it's damaging confidence. What do you say to them?
We've secured £60 billion of investment into the UK economy today. That's more than twice as much as what the previous government achieved at their last investment summit. I'm really proud of that. It's an endorsement of what this government are doing to bring stability back to the economy, to the reform that we need to see in our economy, as well as those joint investments between public and private sector to unlock the £60 billion that we're able to announce today.
It's getting colder. What do you say to pensioners who can't afford to put the heating on? They're worried about this, having this winter fuel payment removed from them.
I understand why people have concerns, but what I would say is that every pensioner is better off this winter than they were last because of the pension triple lock, which saw pensions go up, the new state pension go up by £900 compared with a year ago. And at the budget, I'll be able to announce the increase in the state pension from next April, and that's likely to be around £450, so worth more again than the winter fuel payment. But of course, we are protecting the winter fuel payment for pensioners on pension credit, and because of our campaigns, we are seeing the number of people apply for pension credit go up and up.
How many signed up? How many signed up?
Well, we've seen the number of applications go up 3- or 4-fold in the last few weeks because of the campaigns that we've been running, which means some of the poorest pensioners will not only keep their winter fuel payment, but will get hundreds, if not thousands of pounds extra of pension credit. And I'm really pleased that we're able to protect the poorest pensioners, even when we are having to make difficult decisions to clear the black hole left by the previous government.
Keir Starmer's paid back thousands of pounds worth of freebies. Have you paid any money back? You received £7,500 worth of clothes, Adele tickets and so on.
Well, since I became Chancellor of the Exchequer, I haven't accepted any donations or received any hospitality. I think in opposition to get that support to be able to do my job, I appreciated that support. I never plan to continue, for example, people helping me with my wardrobe in government, but that was something I did value when I was Shadow Chancellor.
Of course. And just finally, academics, a different issue altogether, academics say that the UK slavery reparations bill could be up to £19 trillion. Will we ever pay money back on reparations for slavery, and should we?
Look, I don't think that is on the cards, and certainly not anything that has come across my desk as Chancellor. My focus is on fixing the public finances and ensuring that there is money available for our National Health Service whilst rebuilding the foundations of our economy.
Just very finally, Elon Musk isn't here. Did you ask him?
No, Elon Musk isn't here, but what we do have is investors here announcing £60 billion or more of investments in the UK economy today, securing 40,000 jobs right across our great country.
Rachel Reeves, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Well, that was the Chancellor of the Exchequer there, finally flambéed by GBNews' political editor. And let's cross to him now for some reaction from that investment summit in central London. Chris, welcome back to the show. Fantastic job as ever there, my friend. Fantastic job. Key points there. You spoke to the Chancellor on slavery reparations, on the budget, on pensioners, freebies. Elon Musk, let's start with slavery. 19 trillion quid's worth. This has been mooted around in the press. We know people like David Lammy, of course, now Foreign Secretary, has his eye on some kind of bumper payout. Rachel Reeves' response, I don't think that is on the cards. Hardly a firm no.
No, not a no, but certainly turning her face against them. We heard earlier from the Prime Minister's spokesman saying it is not a space where the UK goes towards we don't pay reparations, he said. The reason why we're talking about it now, Martin, is because next week it's the Commonwealth has a government meeting in Western Samoa. We know that there's some Caribbean nations there who are clubbing together to try and get some more advanced countries, and the UK included, to pay money out as much as £19 trillion at the top end, more like 200 billion at the lower end. But she said her focus is fixing on the public finances and ensure there's money available for our NHS while rebuilding the foundations of the economy. And it's not on the cards. It hasn't come across my desk. So I think that's a pretty much a no. We certainly heard a no from number 10 earlier, but that's the kind of the conversation at the moment. What David Lammy makes of this, of course, he is someone who said we're tired of apologies, we want compensation, and that was back in 2018 as the Windrush scandal broke.
And I'm pretty sure that at that Commonwealth Summit, perhaps, Chris, this will be coming across the Chancellor's desk, because you can bet, as damn sure as mustard, some certain Commonwealth nations will be asking for those reparations. Let's see what happens then. The clearest indication yet, I felt, Chris Hope, when you'll sit down with the Chancellor, that there will be a very likely increase in employers' national insurance. It seems all but a given now that's going to happen, Chris.
Yes, I think that is pretty clear when she was making very clear in her world that I said your manifesto says we will not increase national insurance. And she replied and said, you've read our manifesto, it says in black and white, not increasing, as we know, tax on working people, national insurance, income tax and VAT. Not employers, I said. She said that wasn't in the manifesto. So that's a pretty much signposting that we're looking at some increase in national insurance, whether they want to increase the level at which employers pay national insurance up from 13.8% to higher, or whether they might start charging NICs, national insurance contributions, on pension contributions, which currently doesn't exist. If they go to 13.8% on the pension side, that's £17 billion a year into the coffers, a huge tax on businesses. What they might make of it here, I don't know. Speaking here from the Guildhall, all the CEOs, the bosses, the big money men who have been spoken to by Rachel Reeves and Sir Keir Starmer earlier and others, they're off now to St Paul's Cathedral, where we're expecting Elton John to play there. But the Rocket Man is still standing.
Yeah, will the budget hopes be blown out like a candle in the wind? Talking of which, on British pensioners, you stood up for pensioners again, Chris Hope. Thank you very, very much on behalf of the thousands and thousands of pensioners that get in touch with me here on this show saying they feel hard done by. But Rachel Reeves saying, I think every pensioner will be better off under a Labour government. That might come as news to the people that get in my post bag.
Yeah, well, she was pointing, wasn't she, to the increase in the state pension from April next year, announced back in September, of several £100s. She's saying that outweighs the loss of the £300 each winter fuel payment. So she's trying to net off one off the other. And it just draws attention to the fact, why didn't the government announce this change to the state pension winter fuel payment on the same day as it increased the state pension? Because then it would look like it's one hand, what we're giving with one hand, taking away with the other. Instead, they announced the winter fuel payment, highly controversial, not in the manifesto. They announced that on the same day as increasing pay for millions of public sector workers. It looked like they were choosing favourites, and pensioners weren't involved in that conversation.
And finally, you asked about Elon Musk. Of course, the world's richest man would have been quite an asset to have had at this conference. But of course, he had a bit of a Twitter spat with Sir Keir Starmer over allegation of two-tier policing, and also Elon Musk very outspoken about the fact that the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was locking people up for Facebook posts, and he's not there. Conspicuous by his absence today, Elon Musk.
That's right, Martin. He wasn't invited, but plenty more were. Earlier I spoke to Douglas Alexander, who's the Trade Minister, and he'd set out why he thinks this has been quite a success, and he gave us a figure on how much money this has pulled in for the UK, £63 billion. Here's what he had to say.
We're looking at about £63 billion worth of deals, meaning about 38,000 jobs are going to be supported by the announcements that are being made today. So it's been an important, significant, and I think very constructive day for the UK economy.
I was there last year at Hampton Court when the Tory government did a similar event in December. It's more than that, though, isn't it?
It's about double the number that was managed last year, and I think that speaks to the reality that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, spoke about this morning. Arguably, the United Kingdom is now the most politically stable of the G7 economies, and I think the investor sentiment here in the Guildhall reflects that reality, that there is confidence in the government, confidence in Britain's political stability, and a willingness, therefore, to invest for the long term.
So it's a dividend on the back of your landslide victory in July. That's what's happening here, and companies like stability.
Well, undoubtedly, the fact that we have not just a majority in England, but I would say as a proud Scot, a majority in Scotland and also a majority in Wales, is critical. Political stability doesn't guarantee economic stability, but it certainly helps. And talking to investors, what they want is predictability, economic stability, and a long-term horizon. If you've got a large majority, you can plan in terms of years rather than weeks and months. And that's what we're hearing investors want.
And there you have it, Douglas Alexander saying that maybe the biggest dividend from the landslide victory for Labour back in July is certainty for the companies here. This government's going nowhere for 4 or 5 years, despite all the rows about freebies. It's staying put. It can guarantee maybe, I would reckon, even capping corporation tax at 25% for 5 years. That kind of thing may come up in the budget, and companies here will be delighted.
Chris Hope, another excellent shift you put in today for me at the investment conference there. Thank you very, very much. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you. Now, moving on, it's time is ticking on your chance to win £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway. Here are the details, all tax-free.
There's only 2 weeks. Good luck.
Coming up next, we'll be hearing from former Tory MP Andrea Jenkins. After that, Have I Got News For You programme. A programme I think is about as funny as Root Canal. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Young adults spend a few years living away from home at university, those who go to university, but many then have no choice but to move back in with their parents because of the rising cost of renting.
But is this an excuse, and are Gen Z or Z just being lazy?
I mean, what do you make of it, Debbie? Because we do have to have some sympathy, don't we, in that, you know, rents are very high, it's very hard to get a mortgage. There are issues there.
I think the push towards young people to go to university as well is not necessarily the right thing for a lot of people. And I think people should start work early. These guys leave their universities with a huge amount of debt, no jobs, or huge rent. You know what I mean? It's just ridiculous. So I think we've got to look at the work ethic and start it younger. Because I think it's so easy just to move back with your mum and dad, isn't it?
To speak like a Gen Zer, they would say that, well, it's OK for your generation, you had it easy.
Realistically, that isn't quite that true, because a lot of people then didn't go to university. This is a relatively new thing that everybody goes to university.
I have to say, what strikes me today is that you still have, amongst all these problems, not having enough money, going to university when perhaps you shouldn't be, all these sort of issues, you still get all these people saying, well, I'm going to have a year out.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. And I think the thing is, they say, oh, it was easy for you, but it wasn't really. We still had to rent places.
But the thing is with this debate, Debbie, is the generation we're talking about, Gen Z, who we're accusing of being lazy, have been raised by our generation.
Yeah.
So what have we done wrong that, if they are lazier, has made them like that?
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. I'm Patrick Christys. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:27. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Former Tory MP Dame Andrea Jenkins has called for a Home Office investigation after finding bloody animal organs in a local park in Leeds. She says this could be a sacrificial ritual, which is apparently on the rise in this country. But when we contacted West Yorkshire Police earlier, they told GB News that officers and crime scene investigators attended and established that the organs were from an animal, but they claim there are no suspicious circumstances. Well, let's find out more now by speaking with Dame Andrea Jenkins, the former Conservative MP and Minister. Dame Andrea, welcome to the show. You contacted me yesterday, you sent me this picture, a grisly sight, and you reported this to your local police. And tell me what they told you. OK, sadly, unless you're a lip reader, you couldn't really tell what Dame Andrea Jenkins was saying there. We shall try and establish... Yeah, we've got a... Dame Andrea, let there be light and sound. Over to you. Tell me, as I said, what the police told you.
Yes. So what happened then was I was walking with my little one and we came across these animal organs. I mean, at the time, I didn't know if it was animal, human, you know, I'm not a biologist. And so we phoned the police and we met them there and showed them where it was. Now, speaking to the two police officers, they said there's been a big rise in this. We had a conversation about, you know, sacrificial animals, and they'd said that they'd had a rise in that as well. And when I was an MP as well, actually, we heard this. And there's a charity in Leeds who the one who runs a charity, when I was an MP, also told me that this was on the rise. Now, it clearly wasn't a fox or anything because the organs were intact. It was literally looks like it's been completely removed from an animal. There's no other of the carcass there or anything. So they took it away to be tested immediately. And then what happened then was they phoned me that Saturday evening and said they've done the test and it's definitely an animal and they're now passing it to the council.
OK, Dame Andrea, thank you for that. And you also appeared on the leftist favourite comedy show. I use the word comedy with inverted commas. Have I Got News for You? Recently, tell us about your experience. In fact, I think we've got a quick clip. Shall I play the clip first and then get your reaction?
OK.
He'll come back, won't he?
I don't think it's over for him, no.
You don't think it's over?
I still think Boris was one of our better Prime Ministers, yeah. I see you've selected the audience, you know. The people who don't like Boris or Conservatives, yeah.
You can't just say you've selected the audience. You've got no evidence for that, no proof. It's just this isn't GB News.
And there we have it, Dame Andrea, the biased BBC corporation. You were saying this audience seemed very, very one-sided. Tell us more.
Well, when you each sort of go on stage separately, and I got booed initially, and the warm-up act, I think it was then trying to encourage them to clap, so they then clapped me. So I knew it was going to be not an easy ride, but I'm not complaining. It was quite a fun show to do. But I think clearly, Martin, even if it's not selected, I think a certain, you know, people politically want to go on BBC shows, don't they, in the audience? So I think more likely it attracts left-wing people anyway.
I reckon if they took all their jokes out about Boris and Brexit and Donald Trump, there'd be nothing left.
Yeah, I mean, what you actually do, we recorded it for 3 hours, 15 minutes, Martin. And unfortunately, some of my lines didn't get put in there where, I mean, one of them, Paul Merton, I had a comeback line and he shot me a disapproving look. That wasn't in there. But I guess if it's nearly 3.5 hours worth of footage to narrow it down to 30 minutes is a big ask. But I mean, it was a lot to concentrate for that long as well, Martin, you know, over 3 hours to concentrate. But there was a lot of banter. But I think the sad thing is I just feel that I just come across as just smiling sweetly because not a lot of my lines was in there, unfortunately.
We did very, very well, as ever, in a hostile environment. I've been on those shows, not on that particular show, but I've been on all the political shows, and I think the audiences are completely biased. And I repeat my line, I think Have I Got News For You is about as funny as Root Canal. But you did a great job on there. Thank you very much, Dame Andrea Jenkins, and also thank you for joining us and highlighting the potential rise in animal sacrifices. Thank you for your company. Always a pleasure. Now, lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including Phones for You founder and billionaire John Caldwell on whether the Prime Minister should get a whopping pay rise. But first, here's a guy who definitely deserves a pay rise. It's Mark White with your headlines.
At 5:32, the main headlines from the GB News Centre. The perfume bottle carrying the Russian nerve agent that killed a Salisbury woman contained enough poison to kill thousands of people. The official Novichok inquiry heard how 44-year-old Dawn Sturgis died in hospital hours after coming into contact with the nerve agent. She'd collapsed at her boyfriend's home on the 30th of June 2018 after the pair found the discarded perfume bottle in a local park. The nerve agent had been used in a bid to murder former spy Sergei Skripal. His daughter Yulia and a local police officer also fell seriously ill. Stansted Airport is to undergo a massive transformation as part of a £1.1 billion investment. The 5-year construction programme will expand the main terminal by a third and see the existing building refurbished. The redevelopment will create 5,000 new jobs and also deliver a 14-megawatt solar wind farm on site. A solar farm, I should say, which will help power the airport's infrastructure. The plans were unveiled by the Prime Minister at the flagship International Investment Summit in London. 4 US tech firms also used the summit to announce plans to invest £6.3 billion in a data centre infrastructure in the UK. A jury at the Old Bailey has been told how the father of Sarah Sharif fled to Pakistan after allegedly killing the 10-year-old. The court heard that Irfan Sharif then called police to say, "I legally punished her and she died." Sarah's father, her stepmother and uncle are on trial accused of killing her. Her body was discovered at her home in Woking in Surrey in August last year. The defendants have pleaded not guilty to her murder. The police firearms officer who fatally shot London man Chris Kaba has told the jury he thought one of his colleagues was about to die when he opened fire. Giving evidence in public for the first time at PC, Martin Blake said he was filled with dread as the Audi Mr. Kaba was driving moved backwards and forwards as officers surrounded the car. PC Blake shot the 24-year-old through the windscreen of the car in Streatham in south-east London in September 2022. The officer denies murder. The FBI is investigating whether a man caught with loaded weapons near a Donald Trump rally at the weekend was part of another attempted assassination. Local police arrested the man carrying multiple weapons and fake passports as he attempted to get into the Trump rally in California. The 49-year-old Las Vegas resident denied wanting to hurt the former president and was released on bail. The local county sheriff said the suspect was likely to be a sovereign citizen, someone who doesn't want to be controlled by the government. Well, those are your latest headlines for the moment. We'll have a full summary for you at 6 o'clock. In the meantime, back to Martin Daubney.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Mark. Now, joining me next, of course, is Jubes & Co. Michelle Juby, 6 till 7. Here's Michelle. Michelle, always a pleasure. What's on your menu?
Yes, I'm back from a week in sunny Greece. the weather here. It's quite disappointing, isn't it? But of course, everybody is focused on this investment summit. Is it an investor's paradise then, the UK, or not? The whole lunacy, I've heard you talking about it as well, of Elon Musk. How can you not invite the world's richest, most entrepreneurial man? What on earth is our government thinking? And speaking of what they're thinking, reparations. Really? Is this the direction of travel that we should be going in or not? The EU, do we need to reset relations with them? And lots more. Alex Dean and Mike Buckley keeping me company.
Well, Michelle, we put that question to Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, earlier on. Is there any chance of slavery reparations? She said, I don't think that is on the cards and not anything that has come across my desk yet. Michelle, the Commonwealth Conference is next week. Sure as night follows day, call me Mystic Martin. I reckon it will be in the Chancellor's in tray soon. I really do.
Well, I've got to say, I'm a keen viewer of the Martin Daubney show, Martin. So I saw that interview and I saw what she said, and I would love to skip into the 6 o'clock news hour thinking, yes, that is definitely the truth. I'm not convinced.
Jude & Co, 6 till 7. Magnificent. Great to have you back on Terra Firma. Now, don't go anywhere as we're hearing from the Phones For You founder and the billionaire, John Caldwell, on how Labour are performing. That's next.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, heading into tonight and tomorrow, it's often going to be cloudy with some rain and drizzle. There will be some clearer and brighter spells in the north, though, and feeling rather mild in the south. Some showers and longer spells of rain across the far northwest of Scotland and in the southeast of the UK, but this clearing away now as that frontal system drifts towards Europe. It is leaving behind, though, plenty of clouds, still with some drips and drabs of rain and drizzle, mainly across hilly areas, and this cloud will move its way northwards across the country, bringing a fairly cloudy night to come. There are plenty of clear spells in the far north of Scotland, and that's where it's going to be feeling cold under those clearer skies, but elsewhere still a fairly cool night on offer, but mild in the far south. So to start Tuesday then, there will be plenty of clearer spells in north of Scotland. Quite a cold start, perhaps some pockets of mist and fog and some frost in rural spots too. But otherwise it is going to be largely cloudy, still with those drips and drabs of rain and drizzle, once again just mainly over hilly areas, and a fairly cloudy and drab start across the rest of England and Wales. Now, this leads us into a fairly dry day, but that cloud is going to be sticking around. Some brighter spells at times, once again the far north of Scotland, perhaps at times down across the southeast, but otherwise a fair amount of cloud around, and quite breezy at times around coastal areas. But on the whole, largely dry, once again some rain and drizzle across the hills, but otherwise a fairly settled day on offer, and turning a little bit warmer across the country too, particularly in the south and southeast. We're looking at highs of around 17 to 18 Celsius. Into the evening, it will turn more and more unsettled. We'll see some showers, some longer spells of rain creeping up from the south. This will be heavy at times, and that leads us into an unsettled day on Wednesday. Drier and cooler on Thursday, but likely turning wet and windy towards the end of the week.
The latest GB News travel.
On the M62 in West Yorkshire, the eastbound exit is partly blocked at junction 29 where it meets the M1 where a car has broken down. Once you get onto the M1, the inside lane's closed northbound in Bedfordshire from junction 10 to 11 near Luton for emergency repair works. And the A34 in Berkshire is closed northbound from the M4 north of Newbury to the Chiltern interchange heading over the Oxfordshire border following an accident. On the M27 in Hampshire, one lane's closed eastbound from junction 8 to 9 towards Fareham where a car's broken down. There are long delays on the M5 northbound in Somerset from junction 25 to 24 near Bridgewater following a collision. On London Underground, Camden Town Station is closed because of flooding, and there are severe delays on the Victoria line due to an earlier fire alert at King's Cross and Pancras, as we understand from TfL. And that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 5:41. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now we're going now to Christopher Hope. I think Chris Hope is going to join us. OK. So we are now going to the story of the Millwall fan. Chopper has been speaking to John Caldwell earlier on, the Phones For You billionaire. Here's what he did.
With me now is John Caldwell, known to many for founding the Phones For You phone chain, but also a major investor in this country. John Caldwell, how have you found today?
I found it an excellent day. I'm extremely enthusiastic about what I've heard. There's a huge amount of positive rhetoric, and every bit of rhetoric is absolutely in line with growth and climate change. Now, the big challenge, of course, for the Labour Party, or any other party that would try this level of improvement in the UK economy, is the operations and the implementation of. But there's no doubting the drive of this party to make the difference to Britain, make Britain stronger economically, and as a result be able to use that revenue to improve everybody's lives.
Were you surprised by the remarks from the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, to make every regulator in this country, especially competition and economic regulators, take growth seriously? Almost a Tory could have said that, couldn't they?
Well, I think the whole thing about the Labour Party is surprising. It's almost like I'm stayed with the Tory party, except there's a few Labour bills coming through potentially regarding employee rights and so on. But other than that, it feels as I've backed an even more, or not an even more effective Conservative Party, because the Conservative Party were utterly ineffective. But it seems as I've backed Conservative principles, but with a great desire to implement them way beyond anything I've seen in the Conservative Party for many years.
We heard that corporation tax will stay capped at 25%. The indication from the Chancellor was they might set out a direction of travel for corporation tax. Is that the kind of thing you want to hear in business?
Well, I think what I want to hear is a rounded, balanced view that encourages growth in UK business, in the businesses that are here, and in inward investment. There's got to be some tax rise somewhere, and that's okay, as long as the balance is pro-business, pro-inward investment, pro-expansion, and then we're on a really virtuous circle going forward.
Is that okay, though? I mean, it's very quite rare for a company to say they're okay about tax rises. Well, which tax rises do you not want to see? Maybe CGT, capital gains tax, could be a problem.
No, it's difficult to say what I don't want to see, because it's back to that balanced viewpoint. I don't want any tax. No businessman wants any tax. No individual does. The reality is we have to have a set of fair taxes, and those taxes have to be balanced in such a way that businesses are encouraged to develop in the UK, grow in the UK, and come into the UK. And if Rachel Reeves and the Labour Party do that, then they have indeed pulled off a masterpiece of operation.
It could be a triumph of hope over expectation. We'll know more, won't we, on the budget day on October 30th?
We will, but I am confident, because, you know, the one thing that's crystal clear to me is they have a growth agenda, and they're not going to do anything to jeopardise that growth agenda. But it's more than just tax, of course. It's deregulation, it's stability, not changing your minds, giving the investment community a clear directive of where this country's going.
Maybe a dividend of that landslide in July is certainly for 5 years for companies like yours.
I think that's absolutely right. The landslide victory gives them the power to implement change, the power to do what's right for Britain, and I think.
Now, in 2017, Millwall fan Roy Lorna risked his life and saved an estimated 30 other lives when he heroically attacked an ISIS terrorist at London Bridge. We'll talk to him next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're joined by Lewis Oakley and Esther Stanhope. And Lewis, let's start with Free Gear Keir, shall we? It's been the story of the week, and apparently it's led to, well, calamity in the polls.
Yeah, so he has dropped by 26 points in the opinion polls. And, I mean, it's just been sort of going down from day one. He didn't even start that high. But, yeah, this is just bad optics. As we say, like, he hasn't done anything illegal or wrong. Everything was declared, but at the same time, you're telling people they don't get their winter fuel allowance, and you're there walking off with your swag bag. It's just not a good look. And even, you know, I was thinking as well the optics of them trying to clamp down on MPs having second jobs. You know, any of those could turn around and say, well, actually, we have to pay for our own clothes. I just think it's just bad optics that he's had. And, you know, we've got those comparisons of Sunak in the stands. He's just sat amongst the people. And
Prince William goes to Villa games, albeit in the director's box, but it's not an 8k per game seat. And by the way, can I just mention, this isn't just an isolated Labour incident. Since the start of their tenure, they were accused of filling the civil service with previous Labour donors, previous Labour aides, people who worked for Labour Together think tank. The civil service is meant to be politically neutral, and they bypassed a lot of procedures to get people into their positions, not least the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who parachuted, Ian Caulfield his name was, who donated £5,000 personally to her, and then he ended up in the Treasury with a 175k a year job. Yes, he did resign after it was revealed in the Times, but it does make you wonder, you know, you've spent years having a go at the Tories for this, and you do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's full of hypocrisy, and also the whole Sue Gray thing, and they were slagging off the Conservatives for not towing the line, and now they're being hypocrites because now they're taking freebies.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What a story this is. In 2017, in June, Millwall fan Roy Larner, the legend, risked his life and saved an estimated 30 other people's lives when he heroically attacked an ISIS terrorist during the London Bridge terror attack. And now they're making a movie about the Lion of London Bridge's life. He was stabbed 7 or 8 times and he suffered severe injuries to the head, chest and on both of his hands as he tackled those Islamist assailants. And I'm now joined by the London Bridge hero, Roy Larner, and the film producer and screenwriter who helped him to make this movie, Dougie Brimson. Gents, welcome to the show. Roy, got to start with you. Absolute legend. You know, at the time when I saw that, I just thought you're precisely the sort of best of British we need in this country. Mate, you probably told the story a million times, but for the benefit of the viewers tuning in now, tell us about that remarkable night.
The night in June in 2017, obviously there's 48 people been stabbed, 8 people died. I was one of the last people to get stabbed. Got stabbed by 7, 8 times. But over the years, a lot of stories have come out. Probably countless people I've saved over the time. And also, afterwards, it's just been let down by the government, the people with the powers to be, let me down so many times. I've had to really go through counselling myself to get through my mental health and everything else. There was nothing there for me. There's no compensation I got. And now, hopefully, the film will come out and give the truth of how I was let down and why I was let down so much. And well, after doing so great on that night, probably saved countless people's lives.
And Roy, you stepped up and you stepped into danger, you know, in a truly heroic way without even questioning your own safety. That makes you, in my eye, the very, very best of British. But I was astonished to learn that after this event, Roy, you were investigated by Prevent. Is that correct? The government's anti-terror movement. What on earth was that about?
I was nicked straight after by there was an incident that happened 6 months prior to that, because they see my face after the terror attack. They decided to get me nicked, make a complaint, and obviously the police got me nicked for making a racial word, which I've publicly apologised so many times. And it was just being let down and being nicked by an MP after I was calling out for help all the time. I mean, just going on Prevent is because of maybe words I've said in the past. The But what do you expect after being nearly murdered, left on the street by 3 crazed jihadi terrorists, who the police knew at the time, I think, and left you there on the street to die in London, in the middle of London.
I mean, Roy, in many senses, it's a tale, it's a very, very modern tale. You stepped in to almost risk your life, then you ended up on the receiving end of Old Bill. Now, that brings me to you, Dougie Brimson. You stepped in to offer, there was a battle of wills to try and get the options to the movie for Roy's life. You stepped in, of course, you've made Green Street and Top Dog before. Tell me, what attracted you to this movie? How can we see it? And can people get involved in how we help to fund it and get it made?
Yeah, I mean, like everybody, you said it yourself, Roy's the best of British and he's a genuine working class hero. And we've got too few of those in this country, and we should certainly be celebrating and acknowledging the ones that we have got. I mean, so I followed the story right from 2017 with interest and watched what's happened to Roy and what's been done to Roy, which is a terrible injustice at the hands of the establishment. And a couple of years ago, I was approached with the idea of doing it. Doing the movie, but Roy wasn't really ready at that point because Roy's input is going to be fundamental to the whole story. And then about 4 or 5 months ago, they approached me again and said, "Look, Roy's ready." So I got a copy of his book, The Line of London Bridge, read it, and I worked out the story. And we're now in a position where we're about to launch a crowdfund to fund the development of the movie. And the reason we're doing that is because it takes so long to get an independent movie off the ground these days. And Roy's got such a huge groundswell of public support. And an example of that happened after the event when they set up a crowdfund campaign to raise £500 to replace his glasses. And they actually raised £52,000 in a matter of weeks.
Wow. OK, Dougie, I have to interrupt there. I have to interrupt because we're running out of time. I want to give you the final quick word. Roy, do you ever buy a beer anymore in Millwall?
No, not really. And I'd just like to say thank you to every supporter in the country that's given me support over the years. Has made me get through all this. And hopefully the film will make justice of what Dougie's doing as well. And Leo obviously wants to play.
Great stuff. Well, Roy and Dougie, thank you very much for joining us on the show, and we're going to stay in touch, make sure we can do all we can to promote your movie. Now, I'm back 7 till 8. Jubes & Co is up next, 6 till 7. See you soon. Cheers.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, heading into tonight and tomorrow, it's often going to be cloudy with some rain and drizzle. There will be some clearer and brighter spells in the north, though, and feeling rather mild in the south. Some showers and longer spells of rain across the far northwest of Scotland and in the southeast of the UK, but this clearing away now as that frontal system drifts towards Europe. It is leaving behind, though, plenty of clouds, still with some drips and drabs of rain and drizzle, mainly across hilly areas, and this cloud will move its way northwards across the country, bringing a fairly cloudy night to come. There are plenty of clear spells in the far north of Scotland, and that's where it's going to be feeling cold under those clearer skies, but elsewhere still a fairly cool night on offer, but mild in the far south. So to start Tuesday then, there will be plenty of clearer spells in north of Scotland. Quite a cold start, perhaps some pockets of mist and fog and some frost in rural spots too. But otherwise it is going to be largely cloudy, still with those drips and drabs of rain and drizzle, once again just mainly over hilly areas, and a fairly cloudy and drab start across the rest of England and Wales. Now, this leads us into a fairly dry day, but that cloud is going to be sticking around. Some brighter spells at times, once again the far north of Scotland, perhaps at times down across the southeast, but otherwise a fair amount of cloud around, and quite breezy at times around coastal areas. But on the whole, largely dry, once again some rain and drizzle across the hills, but otherwise a fairly settled day on offer, and turning a little bit warmer across the country too, particularly in the south and southeast. We're looking at highs of around 17 to 18 Celsius. Into the evening, it will turn more and more unsettled. We'll see some showers, some longer spells of rain creeping up from the south. This will be heavy at times, and that leads us into an unsettled day on Wednesday. Drier and cooler on Thursday, but likely turning wet and windy towards the end of the week.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems in Greater Manchester on the M62. The inside lanes closed eastbound at junction 20. The Rochdale tunnel for a car's broken down in the roadworks. The exit slip is also partly blocked approaching. On the M1 in Bedfordshire, the inside lanes closed northbound from junction 10 to 11 near Luton, and Bedford emergency repair works are underway. And in central London, the Euston Road is shut heading into the capital from Great Portland Street Station to the Euston Underpass because of flooding and water mains burst. It's really still on the M25 clockwise out of Essex into Kent after a car broke down over the Q2 bridge.